and it says you're live. So
So that must mean we are live.
I think it means we're live. So I'm going over to where I'm viewing the stream, and I want to see if it's gonna. Just,
It does not say we're live from
Are
where
you
I'm at.
worried that using your home address for business
Oh,
puts your
yeah, I
privacy
can
at
hear me
risk?
now.
At
Okay.
iPostal One,
I'm in an ad, so let's see here.
And
Okay.
it says
Yeah.
we're
Boom.
live.
Look at
Yeah,
that.
no, we're
Looks
absolutely
like
live.
we're live. All right.
So
Okay.
that
Cool. So I'm just gonna mute that, and then I'm not hearing any feedback. Let me just check and see.
I want to see if
I-
it's gonna.
I think I feel like we feel. Oh,
Boom.
God.
Yeah. Everything looks good. Okay. So I think we're streaming. It's
Yeah,
on.
I heard your ad. Yeah, no, we sound great. I don't need 2 ears now. I'm just the other one out. It was weird to try to listen to you and also listen to like 5 seconds late on the stream. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the stream.
I know, yeah. I like. I'm just always trying to get the back feed to not be happening. So I'm like, as long as we're not back feeding, I think we're all good.
Well, everyone can hear us. Do you want to say hello?
Anyone, if you're in the chat, I don't know if Tom's still in the chat. I saw the Interesting Nerd Club was there getting hype. Let us know if there's some kind of issue with the sound, because we don't want bad sound. And then I guess what we'll do is we'll just kind of riff it and just sit here and we'll just kind of do some pre-introduction until we actually hit the mark here in a couple minutes, and then we'll just kind of start answering questions as people show up. If they do show up, I don't know. I haven't done a stream in a long time, so I have no idea if people even remember that I've done streams before.
Well, I don't remember the last time you did one. I was actually really
quite a long time ago.
excited when you said, "Oh, I'm gonna do a stream." I'm like, I really hope I got nothing going on.
I think the last one I did is the Jamie talk one. Although maybe there was one after that I just took down because YouTube. Every once in a while we would do something or say something, and it was never anything like offensive or bad. I think one time like the Iraq War came up, and then instantly I noticed when that stream went up, the monetization was not there. I was like, oh, okay.
No offense, but let's try not to say the specific thing that got us taken down again.
Exactly. Yeah, we'll just try to keep it pretty mellow.
Yeah, I'm down. Yeah, I'm gonna share this on my channel. I don't know who's subscribed to me, who isn't subscribed to you, but maybe. All right.
Yeah, go ahead and share it, and then yeah, what I'll do is actually. No, yeah, never mind. I already put it in the thing. I was gonna say I'll put it in the thing, but I already put a link in the thing. So.
No, you did good.
Yeah, we're all good. So for anybody, if anybody is starting to join the chat, what we're going to be talking about today is questions from a video series that I did. It says a year ago is when I was putting up these Q&As. Lord, how time flies. That's crazy. But yeah. So we're gonna be looking into that, and we're gonna be trying to answer some questions regarding that. So we have 5 concurrent views. Does that mean that we have 5 viewers?
That means there are 5 people watching.
Oh,
nice.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah,
hello guys.
Feel free to start talking in the chat, do whatever you want. And I guess since there are people starting to show up, what we'll do is we will go to the first question, which crazy enough, you're not going to believe this. It comes from this guy named Taco, who happens to be here in the stream.
Oh my god!
Yeah.
Oh my god!
First one.
I completely forgot.
Yeah, first one, most likes.
Holy, here we go.
And it's what's up with the personal cask of wine from the arbor in Illyrio's
Oh
house?
yeah.
Does it hint at the red wines being friends in the Reach? And yeah, so I actually thought that this definitely did hint at them being friends in the Reach, and Preston Jacobs did a little video series about I think her name's like Tanda or something. No, I may be mixing that up. But
you're talking about Merryweather, Merryweather.
Yeah, Taina Merryweather.
Taina Merryweather.
So there's this whole question of like, who do the Merryweathers serve, and what are they doing, and why is Taina cozy up to Cersei, and all that sort of stuff. And the answer to that is kind of contained within the argument that they support the Varys and Illyrio cause. And
that points fingers at the Merryweathers, and then so I did a video that's I probably asked you this while I was working. I bet if we look, it was either when I was working on my Paxter Red Wine video. I bet is when I asked you this. It was probably fresh in my head. So, because I know I brought that up when I covered Paxter Red Wine. So yeah, when Tyrion was with Illyrio Mopatis, he brings up a personal, like a cast of like the personal, whatever you want to say, a reserve for, it was like Paxter's grandpa.
Yeah.
Right? Which kind of puts them right in like kind of somewhere towards more Blackfire Rebellion era, which totally fits the idea of Illyrio working with the
second you start getting
Golden Company.
Second you start getting really old people, this is the second you start getting into some of the Blackfire Rebellion.
Blackfire, yeah, because just remember that's like 2 generations ago. It's not long ago.
It's not long,
right? Like, no, especially the last one, but even the ones before that, like it's not very long ago where people were knee deep into Blackfire rebellions. It's like 70 years. It's not that long ago.
As an interesting side tangent or side note, I guess I would say, that whole idea of that not being that long ago, that I thought was actually one of the biggest pieces of evidence that sort of made me start to think that it was plausible. I find this theory to be very fast and loose, but it's still, to me, it's one of the best arguments I've heard, only because it contains all the elements of the series. The idea, which it came from a Preston series originally, which is that the House of Black and White and Rourke and Biter and all of them are working for Varys, and that Varys is, more or less forwarding the Blackfire agenda, and it's antagonistical to Bloodraven. And it's like, that's a very goofy sounding thing, but you're like, well, they're all in the same story though, because who shows up in Dunk and Egg but the Plum, and we know that's Bloodraven. It's like, it's interesting because it's all in there. It's just it's just whether or not you're willing to commit to the belief that it's all going to connect in the end.
No, I won't go that far. Like, usually Preston has me about. It's funny because Preston Jacobs says I'm only right about half this stuff, and he only gets me about half it only gets me about half the time. Like, a lot of the times I'm following him, I'm like, oh, absolutely, the Merryweathers are definitely friends on the Reach, and I think the Red Wines are definitely friends on the Reach. And then, he keeps talking, and I don't know if this is, and then he's just like, oh, and Brave Companions were started by Oberyn, and they're all working for Doran Martell, and it's like, all right, you lost me. But like, about half of them get me, and I think anytime somebody, I also hate Rourke and Biter not being who they are. Anytime somebody's like, oh, they're faceless men, oh, they're clearly doing this, I think that downplays George's themes of broken and violent men doing broken and violent things. And anytime you give a awful person a greater meaning, I think it's a bad thing. As soon as you're like, oh, Rourke and Biter are awful because they have to be because they're working for these guys or that. No, screw that. They're awful because they're awful. And I don't like excusing horrible acts, specifically, like, so anytime a villain starts doing that, I get.
Well, that's why I guess I thought it was all kind of within the wheelhouse of Martin, because it's all revenge, right? It's all this this generational revenge, and so to me, if you follow the theory at least, like I wouldn't view Rourke and Biter as being any kind of good guys, but I view them as being accessories to the House of Black and White, preying upon these cycles of revenge. And the House of Black and White, you could even argue is, in a way, maybe has followed into cyclical revenge patterns or something like that.
Maybe. I don't see how they come into it. I don't remember the last time you actually listened to these videos, so I hope we're not getting them wrong. But I don't see how the House of Black and White are specifically tied into a Blackfire, Bloodraven /
so it's a
Cross Bittersteel.
It's a complex one, and I don't want to go down it the whole way right now. But it's Preston's theory of how it all ties together, and it's odd and weird, but I find it to actually contain all of the things we see in the story, and I'm like, maybe there's something to this. But I don't want, just because we'll fall down a rabbit hole on that one. We could literally sit down and probably have to watch the whole series to get it. Let's do another question. So
let's do another question. This is good so far.
we got one in the chat. Okay. Oh, hang on. One second. I gotta turn Taco up a little bit. Okay, so
Yeah, turn me up.
there we go. Yeah, keep talking and let us know if
Oh,
it's sounding better.
I don't need a reason to keep talking. I don't know if you know who I am. I would like to look at our chat though. I don't even know.
We got from the chat. Christy says, "How young was Varys when he was cut?" And I recall him being really young.
Yeah.
So I want to say he was below the age of like 12.
I don't know if I would go that young. Let me look because I think he was already a trained mummer.
And I thought I thought he was more or less like how old's Arya? She's like 11, 12, and she's be training as a mummer right now. I thought it was in that kind of ballpark, but I could be incorrect. So yeah, so look it up and let's find out, and then I'm gonna jump over and I will pull up some more questions here from the list.
Yeah, I'm gonna read, and I'm not smart enough to read and talk.
No worries. Check it out, and then when you have an answer, let me know. And then I'm just gonna pull a random one here from the bottom of the list. And so this one comes from Reddist, and Reddist is very cool. Reddist actually did a reading at the end of the series in part 5.
Like that.
Why would Illyrio give Dany dragon eggs if he intends for her to die or to be irrelevant, and for younger if Aegon to be king? Or why would he send her off the Dothraki Sea if he didn't intend her to die or be irrelevant or to make Aegon king? And
so this is one of the biggest plot points.
Yeah, this
plot
is the big
holes, I think. Yeah, this is huge.
And so I think it's only a plot hole if we believe that Illyrio thought the eggs would hatch, and I don't actually think we have any reason to believe that.
There's no way.
Yeah.
But why do it? Why give a fortune away as a wedding gift to somebody who you think is you're literally just sending Dany and Viserys to like F stuff up, right? Like, here, let's give them a giant Dothraki army and then they'll just go F stuff up. Why give away 3 priceless possessions, something that one dragon can buy an entire army? Why do that?
Why do it? And so I actually have a decent answer to this in my theory, and that's so if you look at the Cushing library stuff, right? If you look at the Cushing library stuff, and then if you look at the Wikipedia thing, you'll see 2 connections. And one of them is Tyrosh, and then one of them is that the Blackfires have a clutch of 3 eggs, right? So so it's not non-canonical that the Blackfires have the eggs. It was just cut from the script, is how I understand it. And so this, to me, is he's just trying not to give the goat away too early. But
he doesn't want to be
the Archon of Tyrosh.
Blackfire right away.
Yeah, the Archon of Tyrosh is there at the wedding of Daenerys and Drogo, and the Archon of Tyrosh and Tyrosh in general tried to marry into the Blackfire family. Tried to marry Daemon, or did marry Daemon Blackfire.
Did marry Daemon Blackfire.
There's what I refer to as the Tyroshi connection, and then there is the fact that the eggs are, in fact, in Illyrio's eyes, just incredibly valuable trinkets, and he has 1 million of those, and he has way more money than like even the eggs are worth. And so, to me, what I think it is I think that he is legitimately making a kingly offering. It's an actually kingly gift for a real king, Khal Drogo. But more importantly, it says to everybody in the room who knows how to read code that this is a Blackfire orchestrated event, that the Blackfires are pulling the strings here, and we have the proof in the pudding to show it. We literally have kingly trinkets from the king of the Blackfires.
All right.
So that was my...
I got 2 things to say. First thing is, yes, so it says he was apprenticed as an orphan to a troop of mummers, then worked in the free cities. And then the next thing it says is during their stay in Myr, somebody bought him to cut his testicles off. So, so he must be pretty young, so old enough to be working as a mummer, which we already stated. 12 or 13 is when Arya was doing it, so it wouldn't be weird if he was apprenticed as a mummer at that age. So to answer the question from the chat, I would think preteens.
He's young. Probably, it happens to be very traumatic.
Younger than 13, I would guess.
Yeah.
All right, and then to answer what we were saying just now about the 3 dragon eggs, I think your assessment's pretty. It wouldn't be what I would think, but after you said it all out loud, it actually made a lot of sense. That maybe people would read it, certain people in the know, and not your every average day dude is going to read it as, hey, this is Blackfire, but people in the know, like people who understand Blackfire stuff, people who are already part of it, can read it from afar and say, oh, this is a Blackfire wedding.
Yep.
Stuff's gonna happen, right? And then he has a really good reason. Other than that, take away Blackfire, it makes sense to give a Targaryen dragon eggs, period, right?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
that right there, that makes a lot of sense. But and maybe not saying no to yours, I say on alongside what you think, it also could just be, wow, if the idea is for Viserys and Drogo to even cause more chaos and even weaken Westeros more, why don't you give them a crap ton of money on top of it? You know, like, and here's something that you could possibly even buy an army with. There's no way I don't think there's no way in the Seven Hells that he thought that it would actually hatch into dragons.
Yeah, it's another couple of things, Joe would say. It's a symbol of legitimacy, so it gives people a reason to think that she's a Targaryen if they believe that they're Targaryen eggs. So it can function the other way to make people scared of an evil Mad Queen's daughter's return. Oh, because otherwise, well, who's this random chick with silver hair? We don't know. We don't care. She's just some Dothraki woman. Oh, no, wait, she's got eggs? She's actually the Mad Queen's daughter? We need to be afraid now. So, basically, the other thing that I would say, though, is in the cut sections, but also in what we see in the book, the sword Blackfire is important, right?
Yeah.
And it's speculated that one of the ways that the Black Company, the Black Company is a real company in real life, if I recall. The Golden Company. I think the Black Company was like from Hungary or something like that. Either way,
I don't know.
I'm not a medieval history guy. But point being, Golden Company though, one of the speculated ways that their allegiances have been bought is that they have a legitimate Blackfire symbol, and that symbol is the sword Blackfire, and that Halden Halfmaester or someone like that possesses it. And so I would say that is a mirror, right? What we're seeing is this is a mirror, and we're seeing two ways of doing the same thing.
Do you think that Holden Halfmaester has Blackfire?
People have speculated. I believe Quinn, the GM, has a theory about this. And again, based on the Cushing Library things, as I recall, I think in the Cushing Library stuff, Halden Halfmaester is like handed a sword and like no one knows what it is. So it's like...
Oh, I thought it was mentioned that Illyrio might have it.
Yeah, and he likely has passed it to Halden Halfmaester to flash to the Golden Company's commanders to prove they're for real, and then he's going to give it to young Griff when they go into battle, is the theory.
So he's already gone into battle.
And I think it's a good theory.
No, it makes sense.
Yeah.
My only question is, why does he not have it yet? Because he is already in Westeros. They already are rallying people.
But
how come the one time we've seen him...
Has he fought a set-piece battle as young Griff yet? He has right now...
Off-screen, yes.
Off-screen he has? I don't remember that, because as I recall, they haven't unfurled any banners and declared his name yet.
Yeah, I'm thinking of Wins.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah. In Wins sample chapter, off-screen, they already took... or are taking Storm's End.
Yeah, they took Storm's End, and so my guess is they took Storm's End.
And he's leading that battle.
Yeah, my guess is they
took
took
our eyes weren't there.
Yeah, they took Storm's End, though, probably under no banners. And then now that they hold the castle, what's going to happen is they're going to unfurl the banners, and then eventually there's going to be a set-piece battle. They're gonna plan it in their favor, where they're gonna strategize to go, let's lure the big enemy army or some enemy army or whatever into this situation. And part of that set-piece battle, at least in my opinion, and in the theories, this is not just my theories, but I think this theory makes sense, and I agree with all this, is that he'll then flash the sword. There'll be a point where everyone's like, young Griff, he's claiming to be who now? What banners are flying over Storm's End? And then no one will believe it necessarily, and then when the battle starts, he'll whip that shit out, and everyone will go, oh, son of a bitch, he's the real deal. He's the actual guy,
And going with...
and he's not, but they'll buy it.
Well, hey, I don't know. I'm a big fan of the Rhaegon theory, the real Aegon theory.
Oh, okay. So you're
because I'm a contrarian. No, honestly, just because I think it's funny.
Yeah, you're true Aegon theory.
Yeah,
it's fun. It is a fun theory. It is a fun theory.
Well, I just don't believe it's... I don't know what to believe yet, because I'm such a skeptic that I can like a theory, but it doesn't become headcanon to me until it's either so close or like it is actually revealed. Like I can say R plus L equals J is canon in my head, and there's probably like two other things, like Hound is Gravedigger, Robert Strong is Gregor, but like that's kind of it. Like besides that, I don't. And in my eyes, he is still young Griff, but who he is still a question mark to me. I don't know if he is Aegon or fake Aegon or a Blackfire yet. You know, like that just hasn't. It's not solved in my head.
So really quick, Flippin' Fritz in the chat. I want to just pimp my boy's videos real quick here. He asks, how does Stannis play into all of this? And the answer is that a creator called Moonman, who's really cool.
Yes, I'm glad you're bringing this up.
Who's been on the stream with us before. I actually had the honor to stream with him on Taco's channel.
Yeah, he's great.
He's a fantastic guy, super cool.
And he's probably going to be there this Thursday on my channel. Too.
He has an amazing theory. And that talks about this. It explicitly addresses what Stannis is going to do and how he is going to play.
And how Stannis knows about it.
Yeah. So don't want to give away too much, but Stannis apparently is playing this game, and I think he has a really cool, like he does a really great job. Beautiful, also wonderful video crafting, like in terms of videos, like. Unbelievable production levels.
He came out of the gate with the best production.
I know, in the whole fandom, just like knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, no, I was so upset. Like right away, his first video looks like he spent so much time and effort and resources on it. And it's like, here I am sitting in my basement. I'm like, well, screw you then. Like he just knocks it right out of the park. I love Moonman so much. And. Yeah, go check out his video to echo what Random's saying. And I got one more thing about Aegon when I have a chance.
Go ahead. I'm gonna look for a new question. So drop your Aegon thing, and then I will pick a new question.
Well, I was gonna say him needing the sword echoes the Dance of Dragons so much of the side with the least legitimacy just used the iconic items, right? Like you take a kid named Aegon, you give him Blackfire, and then you give him Aegon's crown, and now you have a king, period. Like, oh, but what about his sister? What about his sister? He is Aegon with Blackfire with the right crown, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that knowing that those things are so important, that's why you give this kid named Aegon, whoever he is, Blackfire, right? And that just sure he doesn't have the crown. I wish he did. I don't know where the Conqueror's crown. But if he had the Conqueror's crown,
might be there. Crown might be there. So
again, possibly.
So again, the Quinn the GM video that I use, I cite a little piece of it in my really super long third part in the series. He actually makes the exact same point you're making, and so I think that's a very valid point.
He's a smart man.
It's the he shows from the series of the House of the Dragon where fucking Hightower says that too. I'm like, this is a theme in the universe. This theme of legitimacy is as like Melisandre says this too. Power flows as much from the trappings of power as it does from anywhere else. Like, you know.
And what's Varys's quote about? Power resides where men see it or men believe it.
Men believe it's right. Yeah. So making people think that you are the king is as good as bloodline being the king. You know.
Yep. I found that power resides where men believe it resides, no more, no less. And that's Varys, the guy who possibly is one of the two masterminds of Aegon's conquest, right?
Yeah.
This Aegon's conquest.
Exactly. So it's definitely what he believes to be true.
Yeah, and that's true. I mean. Like you give the guy the right name, the right sword, the right crown, and all the everyone else is gonna just say, all right, yeah, that tracks. Okay. I'm convinced.
So we got a question here.
All right.
Says, I hope I'm not too late to the party. I've always wanted to ask, who are the two players? Varys talks about it with Illyrio. Is it their pair versus Bloodraven? I assume he considers Littlefinger a player, but he's also aware of the others like Euron, etc. So, I'm not 1,000,000% certain, or even 10% certain, or I have very little. Oh, sorry, hiccup. Very little overall certainty about whether or not he truly knew or understood Euron. The theory that I buy into and that I try to show support for and try to weave together is the Preston Jacobs one, that he is essentially, as much as he's battling to put young Griff on the throne, he's battling this Targaryen Blackfire war that we see throughout the whole series, and his enemy is Bloodraven. But
Yeah.
I think in the two players, I think that he truly views himself as the master of the performance, and that's him and Illyrio. And so what I think when he says this is no longer a game for two players is that other people are now starting to play. Like,
well, they know that the game's happening.
Yeah, or they're starting to partake. Yeah, they're starting to they're starting to move. Like for a long time, he was the only one, at least in his mind, the only one. And this is why I don't think he considers Littlefinger a player. I think he thinks he knows so much about what Littlefinger's game is, and I think he's correct, to be honest. I just don't think he knows why. Like that was my Littlefinger theory that involved Varys, is that Varys is really good at determining what motivates you and stuff, just like how Littlefinger says he's good at determining that and figures it out, right? And so Varys is incredibly good at figuring out what motivates you. So how Littlefinger protects himself from Varys is trying to deny Varys access to what motivates him, or trying to spend so much time proliferating bullshit that you can't actually tell what motivates the guy. But I think regardless of whether or not Varys knows what motivates him, he kind of knows where Littlefinger is headed, and he's happy with it. He's comfortable with the chaos Littlefinger will create because it will flow into his plan. That's why I think that he views himself as like a step above everybody, you know?
Yeah, and I think that you don't need to know what game somebody's playing as long as you... How do I state this? It's going back to motivation, but like, do I really care what your game is if I just know how to either motivate you to play your own game or to stay away from mine? Like,
exactly, yeah.
Like, oh, I don't care what you need the money for, but I know that money makes you happy. You know, like that kind of thing. I don't care why you need bananas, but I know if I pay you in bananas, you'll shut up.
You're
like,
good,
yeah. And I think that he knows that Littlefinger, or thinks that Littlefinger's game has nothing to do with, you know, the Aegon. Like, you know, he's not trying to do that, or anything to do. Like, he probably thinks that you get the Golden Army and everyone over. That still, I mean, does he really have to make an enemy of Littlefinger?
No,
like, probably
Littlefinger does a naturally helpful thing, which is to kill off the fighting flower of Westeros. Like what's good for Varys? What's good for Varys is for the old guard to die, and for the fighting flower of basically anybody who might oppose his military to just have a bad day, you know? So anytime that happens, anytime the old guard is killed off, or the prominent fighting crop of people that are going to be the best ones you could resist and defeat a opposing army led by another king in a set-piece battle or a series of set-piece battles, that makes him happy. And so for him, Littlefinger nuking the Riverlands is like, that's dope, bro. Like,
yeah, and also finally getting Vale involved, because they're the army that has sat it out. They're the healthiest army, and if anyone can jump in and stop, you know, an invading force, it's going to be the Vale, and you just don't want that to happen. So it's like, yeah, go mess up the Vale. Like, go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. As long as Littlefinger, and the other thing too is, let's just say hypothetically that Littlefinger succeeds with what he's planning, and that he comes out on top after all his revenge schemes go down, and he's ruined House Tully, and he's ruined House Stark, and he's just thrown a wrench in everyone he didn't like from childhood. Let's say he wins, and he's successful, and he gets away with it, right? Then he's a good person to barter with. You know all his secrets, and he's totally willing to make a deal. So he's a great ally for young Griff, because you can murder him later, or you don't have to. You can just make a deal with him.
I like that. That's a good thing for an ally. Is you can kill him without feeling bad about it later.
Yeah. Well, you got a lot.
Hey, make a deal with him. Why? Because I don't really like him.
Got a lot of leverage over him. He by allowing him to commit so many fucked up acts, he puts himself on the outside of the existing society, and it makes it entirely your decision whether or not he's incorporated into the new society. We roll him up, maybe yes, if we like him. We roll him out if we don't like him.
Yeah, no, pretty much. And also, Varys has learned how to work with and or around Littlefinger for 10 years.
Yeah, so I think he views Littlefinger as just an element that's very much can play into his hand, and he can only cause damage that can help, Varys.
Can I read a question from the chat?
Go ahead, yeah, sure.
Flipper and Fritz asked if we think that Aegon versus Dany war, or if that will happen, or some type of a marriage pact, because I feel like they're going to throw down. I think a war 100%. I think, in my opinion, if I may take this, I think that Cersei's going to flee King's Landing, and I think that Aegon is going to take King's Landing, and he's going to be the, quote, Mummer's Dragon being held up, and everyone's going to love him, and I think he's braced for Dany to then come in and take him out. And then, of course, there's the very interesting Stone Dragon, if you will, of Grayscale possibly being spread in King's Landing via Oldgriff, via John Connington. So I do think it's going to be a bloody battle, and I think that the idea of the bells, the really horrible episode of the television show towards the end, I think a very good version of that's going to happen, because it also ties into the Battle of the Bells, John Connington's big fight during Robert's Rebellion. So I think the bells are going to go off. A, quote, Stone Dragon, which is Grayscale, is going to go off in King's Landing. Well, the Mummer's Dragon has to get put down by Dany, and I think that's going to be a very, towards the end, or one of the very climactic battles in Winds or after Winds. That was a lot. Sorry.
No. I don't mind the big rants. I do big rants, so it's totally fine.
Yeah, you do.
That's
what I like about it.
I was actually going to ask you a question. You haven't seen Kevin Pendragon's Stone Dragon video, have you?
I don't think I've ever heard of Kevin Pendragon until you brought him up earlier.
Oh, okay. So, like I said, Kevin Pendragon, he only has like 10,000 subs, so he's not maybe 11,000. He's not well known right now yet, but he, like I said, like gold standard, absolute gold standard of the community. Like, if you really want to watch insanely good analytic, his video on Littlefinger is the only series that I think stands up to my series. Not a diss on nobody else's series. I just like put a ton of time into mine, and I felt like I really connected to other literature.
Well, I hope you liked yours.
Yeah, well, I feel like I connected very heavily to literature that George wrote, and I felt like I offered... I had my own very fun tinfoil theory in there. But in terms of the major elements, like it being a revenge story and the War of the Five Kings not actually being chaos, and all my references to previous works of George, I felt that that's fucking rock solid. And he did a wonderful video with references to other works from George, and also references to an author that George likes, being Stephen King, and the book The Stand, and the series The Stand. Fucking, it's just amazing. Like I said, if you got time, go check out Kevin Pendragon. But he has a theory on the Stone Dragon, and so I just wanted to know if you'd seen that one, because it's kind of the alternative to what you had proposed, which is that the Stone Dragon is actually Drogon. And it's the dragon woken from stone, being the stone eggs. And so he had some thoughts about how maybe that the bells thing is going to be a totally different or event, or maybe not even transpire the way we're thinking. And so I'm kind of on the fence about it, to be quite honest. I have a lot of thoughts that it would work out pretty neat if Dany does roll up on Aegon and he's on the throne and all that sort of stuff. And then I have some thoughts that maybe it'll be a little bit less clean, like maybe they'll fight each other in the field before they hit King's Landing or something like that. So I don't know.
So you don't think that, like, where do you think the Grayscale is going to? If you don't think that that's the quote, Stone Dragon.
Again, kind of torn, because it's like I think it will definitely ruin John Connington's life, and his story will be a tragic story that ends with Grayscale death. Will it become a plague that sweeps the land? I'm a little more skeptical on. Although that would be pretty fucked up. Like, if, for example, John Connington... Like, that would be an insane tragedy for the land. Is if, for example, John Connington got Grayscale and he died of it, and then they tried to give him, like, one of those Hoster Tully River funerals or whatever, and it, like, poisoned the water supply. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I find it hard for him to necessarily cause such a pandemic by himself. It's possible,
then what's
certainly.
What's the idea of giving him grayscale then? Like, why do that?
I think it's
Like,
more.
what's-
I think it's more thematic to the character would be the argument, and like I said, I'm not sure which of these I buy into necessarily because I also do see how much in terms of this is the thing about this. This is once again this is the problem presented in the story about prophecy. There's several things that are pretty good answers, and so for me, I'm like I'm kind of on the fence there because I feel like the grayscale could be something that's specific to Connington and specific to his character arc and his story, and it's meant to be something very localized. But it easily could be.
You think
that
he might just die of it, and it's more symbolic of his time running out, so on and so forth, like his ambition getting to him. He has to fulfill this for his lost love, getting his lost love son on the throne before he dies. It's more of a ticking time bomb for him, and not so much a plague.
Yeah, it's to me it's potentially it could serve either interest, and I like it either way. I have a hard time necessarily discerning exactly which way it's going to go, but I would say those are the two sides of the argument for sure. Like if I had to pick one for certain, like I do think that the story might be too crowded for a grayscale outbreak because there's already going to be winter and the faith. But George has never backed away from overcrowding the story. So it could be a King's Landing localized event. Like he could perhaps John Connington causes a outbreak that stays within King's Landing but decimates the city, and Daenerys' forces show up on a city that's on lockdown, and people are trying to flee, and she has to decide whether or not to kill them before they approach with dragon fire because they're carrying grayscale. Like, it can get all manner of fucked up, and so I'm totally open to the grayscale thing. I don't want to say I'm shutting it down. I'm just like
I want to talk about Chekhov's gun, because you put a gun on the wall on Act 1 so you can use it in Act 3. George put 50 guns on the wall. Like, he's got Chekhov guns off the wazoo. And if, like, how are we going to have a giant direwolf army, a grayscale, all these things that are just freaking happening all over the place.
That's actually one of the best ways I've ever heard Ice and Fire described. It's like the base, just a too many Chekhov's guns. It's like the scene in The Matrix where all the guns come out. And George is like, all right, that's the opening of the story. Like, oh, well. A lot of shit's gonna go off in the end, isn't it? Yes, it is.
And then, of course, it's like, but will you guys even get the ending? Yeah. It's like, hey, come on, man.
Come on, George.
Your entire book is Chekhov's guns, and then you're not going to be able to finish it.
So very quick answer, because I don't want to spend too much time on this question, but I do want to hear your answer to this question. Would you read the series, and do you think it would be any good if, for example, we got Winds, but Spring was written by George's disciples with
absolutely.
his notes?
I don't like ever try to speculate or think or talk about Winds too much unless it's a character I'm covering where they have Winds chapters, because in all honesty, I didn't start loving this series because of the potential future of it. I loved it because I love every bit that exists.
Yeah.
And knowing or not knowing that there's an ending doesn't really affect me that much. And it's funny because I feel like it affects so many people, and there's so many times where hey, I'm obsessed with the Song of Ice and Fire, you should read it. And they're like, yeah, but the other book, it probably will. And I'm like, okay. Like if I give you a foot-long sandwich, you're not going to eat 11 of the inches? Like, you're not going to try the sandwich? Like, what are you talking about? Like, the sandwich is really good. So what if you can't finish it? And I love so much of it. Like, of course, if even Winds comes out, which I'm dubious if it will, but even if Winds comes out, it's going to be one of the best days of my life. I'll be so excited to get through it. It's going to be literally like all of the Super Bowls I've ever had. It's going to be one of the coolest days that has ever existed.
No, I totally agree. I totally agree.
But if that day doesn't happen, so what? Like, it's the same. So we're in the same world we're in now. That's fine. Like, it still gave me so much joy. So if somebody told me it's not coming out, it wouldn't keep me up at night. I'd say, well, I didn't, like, pretty much either way. Like, it hasn't yet. So, I don't know. I'm a little cynical, though.
Yeah, I think we're gonna get wins personally, and I would be happy to read Spring if it was written by some other people using George's notes. I think it would still be fine.
That's fine.
I would even read wins if it was written by other people reading George's notes. Because same thing as IU. I agree that I don't like the series because it's done. I like the series because it's good. And I love the sandwich metaphor, yeah, because like it's a delicious sandwich. Let's just say you only can eat half of it. You still gonna eat it? Of course you are. It's good.
Yeah, of course.
You know?
Good sandwich.
Yeah. So no, I like that a lot. Okay, let's hit up one more question here really quick, and then I do want to answer. I just saw James McCall hit one in the chat.
Yeah.
It's not about Varys and Illyrio, but I have a quick response that I can say, which is
So let's get through your questions, especially.
We're not going to get through all of them. We got so many, but we're gonna let me jump to a different post though. Let's go to a different post. Okay. Let's see here. I think maybe it's the 5th video. I'm trying to find. I know in all my various videos I asked people if they wanted to put questions up. They can put questions up. And let's see if anybody asked a question in the videos. Okay, here's one that's kind of interesting. What about Aurane Waters' huge, overpowered fleet? Paid for by the crown. Is he truly Man and Pirate King, or does he work for the Aegon cause? And do they plan to legitimize him if he works for the Aegon cause? And are they going to make him like a master of ships? Like, what's in it for him? I'm kind of paraphrasing the question, but I think it's a really excellent question. So
I love Aurane Waters.
Yeah, do you want to field this one, and I'll follow up because we're probably going to agree on most of the points, you know.
So I'm trying to find out right now how many ships. So he's getting a flagship. I'm looking right now. All right, so the most of the royal fleet is destroyed. I know it was like 10 giant ships or something, right? Like that's what he wanted built.
Yeah, he had a series of Dromans. I don't know.
Grants him the Grand Admiral, and he receives. So, 10 new Dromans. There we go. I found it. So 10 huge ships, but that of course is also with the royal fleet that wasn't destroying the Blackwater, which I think most of it was. But like it's those are just 10 of his ships. If you can get other houses, so on and so forth, because the fleet is more than just 10 ships, but it's 10 Dromans, so they're like really large, beautiful ships that he's getting built. Do I think that he is a Corsair king? Yeah, like one jillion percent. If because the guy who is doing it is called, I'm trying to find it. So because the I just don't want to get anything wrong.
So really quick, do you think he's
the Lord of the Waters? Yeah, styling himself Lord of the Waters.
Do you think he's going to ally with Aegon? Do you think he's already in the bag? Do you think he'll make an alliance later?
I don't think so. I don't know if he's going to ally with Aegon, at least in a way. I just don't see. I don't see how that's how he's connected quite to that. But I do see a connection to Adam of Hull, or Alan of Hull, Oakenfist, whichever one is Oakenfist, the one who isn't flying the dragon. So Alan, I do see like the idea of a Valyrian bastard with a very powerful ship to maybe be, probably work with Aegon afterwards, like kind of. Yeah, actually, now that I think about it, I don't think this is how I'm going to answer your question. I'm glad that I stumbled and mumbled until I finally figured what I was going to say. I don't think he's tied to him now, but I do think that they will make a deal later on once he gets more powerful.
Okay,
and I absolutely do think that he is the Lord of Waters.
Yeah, you're saying so they'll partner up, but they're not currently partnered right now.
They're not currently. Yeah. Because if you go back to the Dance of Dragons, and this is a bit of Dance of Dragons, this is a bit of a spoiler for how I'm talking towards the end of the war, but when the future king there, who shares the same name as this king of Aegon, he gets a lot of help from a Valyrian bastard who is in charge of a giant fleet. So there's a lot of those weird connections.
Weird parallels, yeah. So
Yeah,
I want to pitch a totally different direction, which is that I kind of have a secret hope, a secret dream that Aurane Waters will just absolutely join nobody, and he will just continue being a pirate king, and I think that this would be really funny, because it's also like what's in his best interest. Like if he really has like a dozen massive ships, and he has a series of other ships on the side too that were taken from the old fleet, then like he's an unstoppable piracy force. Like I don't think anybody in the story or any faction in the story could actually really spend the resources to stop him. He would just kind of be this thing you have to deal with. Like he would be a write-off, right?
Yeah, you're gonna have to. What's my motivation? Because you have to have one of the greatest fleets in the entire country, right? So if I was a red wine, pretty much that's the end of the story. If I was a red wine, what is my motivation to use my fleet to destroy the pirate fleet in the Stepstone? Zero, right? It doesn't. Yeah, I don't need to. I could just work with them.
At a certain point,
like,
you're just paying a tax. At a certain point, you're just going to be like, all right, well, so we don't want to do this fight. Why don't we just send him a tribute and just say, hey, look,
and just let us keep doing our thing.
We're going to fly a flag with grapes, and if you see it, you don't rob us. We don't give a fuck who else you rob. But
no.
Here's 100,000 gold dragons and as much wine as you can drink, bro. We good? Like that's probably what would happen. And so I'm like, oh man, he's in a really sweet position, because the same thing with Karth, the same thing with the Free Cities. Like they absolutely have the power to confront and destroy him. They gonna spend that money though? Are they really gonna spend that money, or is this just a new 1% tax that you just gotta say fuck it?
Yeah, whatever. It's not a big deal. Yeah,
we're paying a little extra, a little teeny bit extra, a little tiny bit on top.
Well, and also it helps you out, because if you're part of a trading, a market, right? Like if me and you are both traders, but I am the red wines and you're just, I don't know, Duskendale, right? You have less money than me, and we're both trying to get goods and trade goods. Me paying my small tax is a lot less painful than you paying it.
Yeah.
So it actually hurts my competition that there is a tax that I don't care about, but that smaller markets do care about, and it makes my market better.
Yeah, you see, you can also pass that tax on the consumer if Duskendale's buying something that only...
Oh, you mean like what happens in real life?
Yeah, like if Duskendale's buying something that can only be brought in by a house that has a fleet, and they now charge a little bit extra. What's Duskendale? Duskendale, they ain't gonna do shit. They're just gonna pay extra, or they're not gonna get that thing.
They're gonna up the price of their own fish.
Yeah.
And then meanwhile, rich ass red wines can still just sell their fish at normal price because we can pay the pirates.
But yeah,
so
he's in a great position. Point being is that Aurane Waters doesn't have to do anything to be making money and live large.
He's on my list of my remakes, which is really funny because now I get to bring up this conversation.
But I do like the idea of him re-entering the story, because I do think it's like, yeah, that appears to be a Chekhov's gun. It's kind of too good to let go, because there's going to be some big naval battles, right? And like what happens with those ships it might be important, and like so like it could be important in a whole bunch of ways. But like I talk about in the end of the game for two players videos, where it's like we have a potential for Greyjoy on Greyjoy ship battles, and that's probably where Victorian's gonna die, right? Like he's probably gonna die killing Euron. Like that's just, I don't know. It just seems like that'd be the way.
I think he's gonna kill Euron.
Or trying to, trying, right? Like so.
He's gonna die doing very little.
Maybe who knows? Maybe if he's riding the dragon, like this, I don't know. Someone's got to.
He's not right. He's not gonna be riding the dragon.
We don't know.
Right.
We don't know. We don't know. My boy Victisi could do anything, but the point being is that there's a real possibility for Ironborn on Ironborn combat, because if they have all these ships and she's sailing to King's Landing or Westeros in general, they've got to come through the Stepstone area.
Well, that almost ties more with Aurane helping Dany.
It could be. But it could,
You know,
it
which
could,
I don't.
but
I
it,
think
it, it could be,
makes a lot
it
of
could be any number of things. Maybe Aurane is paid by the Aegon cause to intercept Dany, and then Euron rolls up into an existing battle, and he sinks everyone's fleet, and then now Euron's the only fleet in the business. Everyone else is sunk.
Yeah, maybe.
Who knows? But it could go the other way, right? So, for example, maybe there's a big battle, and Dany's fleet is suffering, and a Kraken is eating some ships, and Aurane Waters sails up, and he rams through Euron's ship, and it fucking starts sinking, and Euron's drowning in the steel armor, and he'll take it off and survive, or whatever. He'll come back, but like we all think in the story he's gonna die or whatever, and Aurane's a huge hero, and he's like, "Oh, I bring a marriage pact from." Fucking, the king of Westeros. And then Victarion would be like, who the fuck's the king of Westeros? And he'd be like, Aegon the goddamn Targaryen, motherfucker. Where's your queen?
Aegon the Sixth, I think.
Yeah, so it could be one of those, where it's like, where he, maybe that's how the marriage pact gets introduced, is that fleet is works for Aegon and they save the day, and then the marriage pact is introduced, and now there's a contention between various factions that want to marry Dany, and it gets worse, and Victarion doesn't want to pass on the deal or whatever. He tries to kill Aurane Waters. Who knows? I don't know.
That brings up a good question. I'm almost changing the subject, but what's Aegon's middle or nickname with the prefix un? Because there's Aegon the Unworthy, the Unlikely, right? And of the Uncrowned. What's this Aegon's the Un?
Aegon the Un-Targaryen.
I knew you were going there.
No.
Aegon the Un-Targaryen.
No, but it'd be like Aegon the Untrue or something like that, or like.
Aegon,
I don't know.
I don't mind untrue.
I'm not really sure, but I think that I think he's fake. So, but if he's not fake, it'll be Aegon the Unlucky.
Yeah.
That's what it'll be Aegon the Unlucky, and they'll be like, "Well, he just bad timing, bro."
Yeah. Hey, did I finally get the crown? Yeah, but you're way more with dragons are coming. It's like, oh, dang it!
There we go. Big Hat Legion. Aegon the Untimely. That actually would work really
well.
well.
That works really
because
well.
What a shit time to show up and be an Aegon, right? Bad time for that.
I like that a lot. That's good.
And Tansy Matt Aegon the Unverified. Yeah, that's what he is right now, right? We don't know. We can't tell you Schrodinger's Aegon.
Yeah.
All right, let's see here.
So
let's check out another question here.
Let's do it.
All right.
I gotta bounce 10-ish minutes.
No worries. This one should occupy us for 10-ish minutes, and then I'll probably take a bathroom break, and we'll let you bounce. We'll just take a brief pause in the stream. Why did Varys give Gendry to Yoren? It's not very Varys-y to altruistically help Gendry, nor is Gendry much use to Varys as a potential Chaos Bomb Baratheon claimant if he's at the wall. Nor would Gendry feel indebted to Varys as he's unaware of his parentage, thus the danger he was in. Do
we know that it was Varys that got rid of Gendry?
Yeah. It's specifically
we are aware of.
It's specifically, and we're also led to believe that not just led to believe, we're explicitly told. That somebody paid for his schooling as a black. So it was. There's a couple of explanations. Some of them are more reasonable than others. One is the Crown did this, right? Obviously, Robert showed up and paid for his kid to be well off because he doesn't want to deal with him. But Robert does have a odd affection for his children. He's not a good parent. He's an asshole, but he doesn't want to see them die or something, right? So
no, I have a completely different reason.
So that's one, and then the other one is that Varys did this from way back in the day, and that Varys has been cooking this up for a long time, and he's like, where can I stash this guy where he'll have a decent upbringing, a decent chance of survival, and even if everything goes south, he'll have a good skill that he could survive on, but he will be close at hand, nearby.
You need a backup for Storm's End.
Yeah, exactly. I can always pull him out of my pocket. His life won't be fucked if I never touch him. If I never talk to him again, his life won't be fucked. He's got a good career in the best smithery possible, but if I gotta come back and pull on that string, I can make a new Baratheon in a heartbeat. And here's the other weird thing, too. It's like, he doesn't make him like a dyer's boy, like the Green Hand kid, right? He makes him a blacksmith. Yeah. So he's all jacked and like
and looks like
he
Robert.
He looks just like Ridley.
Hammer.
So and he loves to fight and make weapons. Like, okay, so you're hiding him again in a career that's totally a good career, but you're also hiding him somewhere where he just happens to be a jacked Baratheon who swings metal around all day and makes helmets, and that's like his dad. Like his dad wasn't a smith, but it's all like. If you had to pull a Baratheon out of your pocket, the green-handed, skinny Baratheon that's all dye poisoned, or the Chadley swings a hammer kid, like which one of these guys are we pulling out and putting before the court? There's only one option here.
Do you think they didn't already pull a Baratheon out of their pocket? Do we know that on their way over they didn't grab Edric Storm, who was right there? They took their boats right by a Baratheon bastard who is known, who has connections, who has very powerful Stormlanders watching him.
Yeah, Edric Storm, I feel like, is another one in the pocket too, and then Davos spirits him away.
But they both can be in your pocket.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. So
Davos didn't get rid of him though. Yeah. Davos, got rid of him, but didn't carry him away. Yeah, he's with an Estermont.
Yeah, he spirits him away, and it makes me wonder if those people he spirits him away with have any loyalty to Varys, because that's kind of the question of like.
Well, they are specifically Stannis men.
Yeah, but they still could be loyal to Varys, right? You never know. They could have other leaders.
Oh yeah, no one. Yeah, 100%.
But you could also look at that as somebody getting taken out of Varys' power. For example, if he's in Varys' power when he's within Storm's End, because Varys can kind of keep an eye on him. When the smuggling goes down, now he potentially is gone, and then Varys goes, "Well, good thing I had another one." Right?
yeah. Well, that's another thing. Is just because he has one in his pocket, bolt in his
also,
pocket.
We know he's got more than one in his pocket because one of Robert's bastards is at the Heddle Inn. Remember, and the Heddle Inn's associated with Varys, and the Heddles are are Blackfires. Also, interestingly enough,
why do you think that there's one at?
Because there's that awkward scene where the girl is hitting on Gendry, and we know that her father is secretly Robert, and they have the whole thing where I think Arya or one of them points out that the two of them look alike, and it gets like no. So I'm saying the Heddle Inn. So the Heddles are Blackfire supporters.
I've never heard it called the Heddle Inn ever. I've only heard it called.
So Masha Heddle runs the inn, and Tom Heddle is one of the guys
Black
that
Tom Heddle.
Yeah, exactly. So the Heddles are Blackfire associates. She runs the inn. Now she's killed, I believe, which is why these kids are in charge. But the point being,
why no one's in charge.
The point being is that we know he's got more than a few in pocket. We know that he's got
a couple.
Yeah, he's protected a slew of Robert's bastards from Cersei's wrath over the years, and so it's like, to me, it's like I think that we can easily see any number of events as taking one or more of these people out of his power, and there's still plenty within his power, and so I think that. To go back to the question, because we talked a lot, I do want to go back to the actual question here if I can find it again.
Sorry, you keep cutting out. I don't know if it's me or you though.
Oh, okay, no, it's probably me. My thing is not very good. My connection to the internet.
I have to use like puzzle.
But the question though is,
syllables in my head.
Why give Gendry to Yoren? So I think sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And it brings up a good spot of it being Yoren. That's taking him out of pocket, right? Because if you send him up to the wall to get oaths, you're literally making it that he can't challenge for Aegon.
Yeah.
So maybe it's to get him out of pocket.
Yeah, so it could be. I was going to say exactly that. I was going to say it could be. Now, I don't know. Because maybe Varys thinks he can pull him back off the wall, which is totally plausible. Or whatever.
No, you can't.
But maybe he's getting rid of bastards. Maybe he's like, all right.
You absolutely are.
Maybe he's
in a nice way.
Maybe he's like, yeah, you know what we're going to do is that we've arranged a different thing. Our plans are already in motion. We no longer need these bastards. Let's just get them out of here. Shuffle them off. Get them gone, because we're going to do some stuff at Storm's End, and we want our own agenda, and we already have our own guy we're going to put there, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that Varys is very much like that, and they imply that him and Illyrio are very much like that, where it's like they got backups upon backups upon backups upon, you know, they got
Well,
you know,
it's
they
not
got
exactly like
agent after agent after agent. Like these guys are stacked, you know.
Well, it's not exactly
probably so
like,
stacked it's a little impractical and impossible, but they're pretty up there, you know.
it's not like a freaking bastard of Robert is a hard thing to get. You know, there's
Well,
like if you were trying to find like a bastard of Ned Stark, you're gonna have issues.
very
Yeah,
difficult,
but like a bastard of Robert, like he only has bastards and he's got a bunch of them. You know?
Yeah, well, so they tick off. I think he counts off, or someone counts off around like 20 or 22 or something like that.
Yeah, it's something like that.
So if you
I tried to do a short of all of them.
If you think about it, though, it's like the problem with that is that actually being able to find that many bastards is annoying once you've already picked someone to sit on the place.
Well,
now you want to ditch
them?
them. Yeah, now even if you've been holding them, it's like now you're holding too many of something you don't want. That's terrible to say about people, but that's how Varys would look at it, you know.
The best one to use is the one that is verified, and as far as we know, the only one that is, and that's Edric Storm. Edric Storm does have stake on, like, all he needs to do is get a king to say you are legitimate, and then he literally is like second in line.
So I had an interesting thought to kind of close on here before, because I gotta jump off to use the bathroom and you gotta go. But I want one more thought that you can tell me your thought about. So they take Estermont, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Gold Company, and one of the guys who helps take Edric Storm is an Estermont.
Andrew Estermont, yeah.
Kind of makes me wonder if he had a hideout on Estermont Island. Maybe he had a place,
or that he's with them.
Yeah, that's what perhaps he had a secret place that he thought was safe on Estermont Island, and now Estermont Island is taken, and Edric Storm's back within Varys' power, and Varys is like, all right, you know, good.
Well, I absolutely do think that. Like, I think that he definitely could have grabbed Edric Storm, because Edric Storm was just in, I'm trying to find the exact city they took him to, but we know that, he was in one of the free cities, and, has a bunch of guys with him who are all part of, like, you know, important in the Reach, or in the Stormlands, that it's pretty important. Like, if you can get them on board. Like, that's a really good poker chip to pull out of nowhere. But
yeah, so very interesting thought, because I kind of wonder where Edric Storm is at. And
which Heddle do I have a video on? I don't have a video on, but I will do one. I think Black Tom Heddle is on my list sometime this year. I have not covered a Heddle yet. I've covered other characters from the second Blackfire Rebellion, though, but I have not specifically covered Black Tom Heddle. He's in my Aegon, my small council video, my what if small council video for Aegon the Second, because I said that he would be his Lord Commander. But yeah.
That would be very interesting.
Yeah, how about this? I can hold down the fort as you go do your bathroom break and afterwards, so we don't have to do dead air.
Okay, no worries. Hey, you can talk about Maya Stone. That's totally fine. I'll go back in just a couple of
minutes. I will read this Maya Stone question. All right. Maya Stone was confirmed. Is she confirmed? I know that certain people know who her king dad is. Like, like it is known, but I don't think Maya knows. Because she says that she remembers her dad, but I don't think she, like in that speech she has about her dad, she's a pebble or a stone and her real dad's the mountain. Like not the mountain, but, a mountain. How she's more of a son or a child of the Vale. It didn't really seem like she knew that her dad was straight up Robert Baratheon. So confirmed, I think, might be a strong word. There, I think you would need to give some people convincing, and especially if you want to grab a bastard out of nowhere and say, hey, this person is... That's why, going back to Aegon, that's why it's really important you have Blackfire, right? That's why it's really have a crown or a sword, right? So you can say, guess what, this person is this. Or else you can just grab a random dude and say, I mean, it's probably Robert's bastard because he had a bunch. He was banging everybody, right? So yeah, I don't know if Maya Stone is straight up confirmed. And yeah, and would it be preferred her or Gendry? I mean, honestly, Edric Storm trumps both of them. His legitimacy is way more known. He was at Storm's End. I think that he's going to beat anybody when it comes to who's like, if you want to prove who's a Baratheon or not, I think that Edric Storm definitely has the most. Have we talked about Varys? Is or isn't studying magic?
We have not really touched on that yet.
But I'm going to get out of here, but you can definitely talk about what Michael talks about stuff just asked. Did you hear what I answered to Maya Stone? I said I don't think that she's actually confirmed because I don't think Maya knows who her.
I think other people know, though, don't they?
Yeah, definitely other people know. Yeah, but
Maya herself is not aware of it.
Yeah, I don't believe so because of her monologue about her son being, or her dad
being the mountain and all
her
that
father
sort of
being
stuff,
the mountain.
Yeah.
Not Gregor, but, an actual mountain.
That one of her father was Gregor. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, right. And also, Big Hat Legion, you are right. Michaels talks about stuff's videos. All right, I'm getting out of here. Thank you so much for having me on.
No worries. Thanks for coming on and helping me answer some of these questions.
Yeah, I love to rant and ignore the questions as much as this guy. But all right, you have a super good one, and enjoy the rest of your stream. Toss on headphones and join the chat.
All right, sounds good. I will see you later. Thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, no problem.
So, as to the question about the magic, so my thoughts on Varys and magic is that I'm kind of in a weird place because I kind of buy into the Preston Jacobs idea that Varys knows about Bloodraven. And that's a bit about what my series kind of was talked about, where I'm like, I think this is, as weird as it sounds, this idea is good because Bloodraven's part of the Blackfire contention and Young Griff is a Blackfire, and it just seems like what we're seeing is like we're seeing the same fight that we've had these past book series, like in the Dunk and Egg book series and all that sort of stuff. We're seeing the same fight kind of going on. And so I think that Varys is very aware of Bloodraven, but I kind of do take him at the value of disliking the magic. I think that he does in fact dislike it. I just think that he understands it. And so I guess kind of the premise of the theory that I was arguing, which is that I thought that two creators like Kevin Pendragon and Preston Jacobs had really good ideas, and Kevin Pendragon's idea was that Varys is staging a play. That literally he's like putting on a performance for people to watch, and that one of those people, to me, I think would be Bloodraven. And so I thought if you put those two ideas together, that he's putting on a play and he's fighting Bloodraven together, he is basically, like I said, he's putting on a performance for a magician character, a tree wielding, or a tree person immortal that's stuck in a cave that can't move, like a captive hostage, like the end of what was it? The end of Clockwork Orange, where he's strapped in the chair, he's forced to watch everything, right? I kind of felt like that's what Varys was doing to Bloodraven. I mean, I probably didn't make that metaphor clear enough when I was like doing the video, but that's kind of why, like, I think that I think he's aware of the magic and stuff, but I do think that he legitimately, doesn't like it. I don't think that he approves of it or anything like that. I just think that he understands that that's what's happening, Because and that's maybe that's weird, to think about, but like one of the arguments that I would have put forward, because people are like, are you sure that he would know about that kind of stuff? Like, why would he have any reason to think that Bloodraven was alive? And I'm like, if you go back and you read the Dunk and Egg books, like in his own time, like Bloodraven was accredited with powers that are like actually probably greater than what he has in real life. And I mean, maybe not, but like people blamed him for causing the whole spring sickness, which I'm like, I I think that he was intentionally killing a bunch of people, and I think that he was causing dreams and doing telepathy, and I'm like, but does he have the power to disease everybody? And how would he be certain that the right people would die? Like, I don't know. Like, to me, it's like, I feel like in universe, people considered him to be a pretty hardcore wizard. People in universe consider him to more or less be like a Dungeons and Dragons level wizard. So I don't think it's like too I don't think it's too implausible, I guess I would say, to think that he might be aware of Bloodraven and understand Bloodraven as, you know, what he is. So I guess that's my incredibly long response as to so Michael stuff says he might be okay with using magic to put the guy on the throne. I'm one of those things where I guess the kind of way I think about it is I think that he probably thinks about it, or at least understands the world enough to the point where he's like, doesn't think about it as using or not using magic. He just thinks about the world as having those forces interacting. So like, I'd argue he preys upon those forces to put people on the throne, because like he knows that Bloodraven can affect the world. So he shows Bloodraven false things and shows Bloodraven lies, or shows Bloodraven stuff to freak him out or whatever. I mean, and this is this is like very tinfoil. This is incredibly tin, but like this is kind of what I would think would be what's going on in George, in George-dom, would be the idea that he's playing this very multi-dimensional psychological game against Bloodraven because he knows what he's fighting. Like he's like, oh, I'm fighting a super wizard from like Dungeons and Dragons. How would I possibly beat this guy? And so that's why I would agree with the theory, and I believe in the theory that he is presenting lying to Bloodraven, that he is not creating a false or not creating a true narrative, and he wants Bloodraven to believe things that are not true to be true. So that's more or less, like what I would say about in terms of what he wants Bloodraven to think is I think it's a performance. It's not real. He's staging a performance so that Bloodraven feels certain ways and takes certain actions. Okay, let me move on to a question here really quick, just because we actually haven't answered that many questions in the Q&A thing. Let's find another one here. Can you explain young Griff's purple eyes if Illyrio is from Braavos and Sarah had blue eyes? So, to be honest, my memory is waning ever so slightly, as if young Griff has like really distinctly purple eyes or not. So I don't know if somebody in the chat knows the answer to that, if he has very distinctly purple eyes or if he just has kind of dark eyes that could be interpreted as purple. But I believe that Targaryens themselves could also have sometimes, not always, the most purple shades of eyes, and maybe I'm wrong about that too. So if someone, I don't know if Michael, if you know more about the Targaryen eye coloring and stuff like that, but like for example, I know that in the Dunk and Egg series, it's people are upset because Baelor Breakspear doesn't have all the Targaryen features, and not everybody's upset by this, but like certain people are upset by this. So I don't know that it's always like, I think George might understand that genetics are a little bit more complicated than the pundits swear. And that might be, or it might be an oversight. Everyone always points out the Renly eye change and stuff like that. And some like, and maybe people are misinterpreting Sarah's blue eyes. Maybe she actually had purple eyes and Illyrio is lying. I mean, like there could be a series of reasons for that. So, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Michael talks about stuff. I don't think all Targs have purple eyes. I don't think they do either. Just like I said, sometimes they have black hair, or sometimes sometimes they lack some of the predominant Targaryen features, but they're still Targaryens. And so I'm like, I think that he might understand that and might just be like, well, and it's not always going to 100% be what the Punnett Square would tell you it's going to be, Let's see here. Another question here. Several of these questions are very long. But trying to find one that's long but mildly... Oh, okay, here's a crazy interesting one, right? Okay, here's about the little birds, right? So where does he get the little birds from? Which side characters might be agents? So this is a multi-part question. And Varys is the master of disguises and spends all feast and dance in disguise. Is there anybody he might be in secret that we see? Like Pycelle. I don't know if he'd be Pycelle. That seems... I don't think he's Pycelle. But is there anyone in secret he might be? Okay, so 3 questions there. Where does he get the little birds from? Do we know anybody who's side agents? And then is he someone else we're seeing besides like the jailer or something like that? To answer the first one, I think it's kind of unfortunately it's more or less he sources people from that might have a shared origin story, orphans and alike. I think he even says this or something like that. But like the world of Ice and Fire, like Pentos, does not seem to be bereft of children who are having a super hard time, you know. And so I feel like he's able to kind of harvest people from the areas that he was, you know, preyed upon when he was younger, which is pretty scary and fucked up. But that's kind of like I view his character as kind of predatory and crazy to begin with, because he's like tearing out people's tongues and stuff, and like he's like he does a lot of insane shit where it's like he's definitely not a good person, right? He's a very bad person. And so yeah, Michael talks about stuff again. Allegedly, he bought a baby for a bottle of wine when he needed one fast, and I'd believe it even if that story is not true. I believe he has that capacity, right? So it's like I think that's kind of where that comes from. And then which side characters are agents? So one that's been pointed out by Preston Jacobs a long time ago that I totally agree with, because I think it maps out pretty perfectly, is Braun. I always call him Brom. Braun and fucking, now I'm spacing on her name. I almost called her Tysha, but Brom and woman who Tyrion is deeply involved with, and I don't know why I can't remember her name right now, but she's like a major part of the story and everything, and then Tyrion chokes you to death with the hands chain and all that. Shay, there we go. But so Braun and Shay, I think are strong candidates for Varys agents for sure. And then we do know that Yoren is a Varys agent. So those are all pretty strong candidates. And then the Heddles, again, like Masha Heddle and such, those are ones that I think they're pretty strong candidates for Varys agents. There's probably several you could parcel out for the book, but those are ones that I would all mention that I think are important, that we see utilized throughout the story in serious and important ways, right? And then Master Disguises, could Varys be somebody else? I to be honest, I can't think of anybody that he's being. Like, I don't think he's like, for example, Rennifer Longwaters. You know what I mean? Could be, but to me, I just don't see it. So personally, yeah, I'm not certain. So if you guys can think of anybody that you know, is out there in the world that might be Varys in disguise, then let me know. But I can't think of anybody off the top of my head, to be quite honest. Howland Reed. Okay, yeah, there we go. There's one. Howland Reed. And then we got Jeremy Morrison says, I don't think Varys is Varys. Now that would be a twist. Varys is actually Howland Reed. That's the real twist. All right, so let's get one more question here. What else do we got? Okay, so someone wants to know what's going to happen with regards to Illyrio and the Tattered Prince. Which I guess that's a kind of interesting question, because they both would like to be in Pentos, right? but for entirely different reasons. Illyria likes to live in Pentos and like enjoys the power and such. And the Tattered Prince, I think, I believe he wants to go back to Pentos to rule it or something nominally, but that kind of makes me wonder if that means to like burn it down or something like that. So I don't know. I'm a little bit torn on that one. I'm not really entirely sure how the Tattered Prince and Illyria are going to get along. I feel like the Tattered Prince is one of those wild cards in a way, because like, not that they don't plan a bunch, but I feel like it is impossible to plan for everything, and the Tattered Prince is probably not something you're like thinking about ever returning to. It's like he's been out forever, right? He didn't recently leave, like, unless I'm much mistaken. Like, I could swear that he'd been out and about for a long time, and so perhaps he is like an overlooked element or like a wild card or some such. Is probably what I would say about that. So if Varys wants the small folk... Jeremy Morrison... Really quick, actually, I'm reading what Jeremy Morrison said. So Jeremy Morrison said his voice changes when he stops playing the character of Varys. Yes, so I would agree with that. Yeah, if that's what you mean by Varys isn't Varys. Yeah, the perfumed eunuch is a character. That's not who he truly is. He's truly whoever he is deep down. And that's different than who he, presents to the court or whatever. No, I totally agree with that. And then Big Hat Legion. So if Varys wants the small folk not to suffer, does he want to stop the Game of Thrones? No, he does not give a fuck about the small folk, in my opinion. If anything, Varys like legitimately views the small folk as just irrelevant casualties. At least I think that. I think that Varys looks at the small folk as like just something that's going to get, it's the grass that's going to get trampled underfoot. It's not even like, all that for the realm bullshit is bullshit. That's the point of that, is that's a bunch of bullshit, and don't ever trust nothing that he says about the realm. Oh, thank you, Big Hat Legion. That's super nice of you. Thank you for the tip. That's very generous. And I'm glad that you like the videos. It takes me a little while to put them out, but I definitely have had fun making the videos over the years. And now I have a bit better of a sound recording thing, so maybe the future videos, the sound won't suck so bad. Oh, okay. So Michael talks about stuff. The question of, is he really a eunuch? That's an interesting one, right? So that's one that's like, it's very difficult, because also the other one that I've heard is that he's not really. He shaves his head because he's hiding Targaryen colored hair or whatever. And there's a bunch of things about him that are like, yeah, they're kind of unverifiable. We do not, in fact, get a chapter with him, and we do not, in fact, ever see him in the nude. So it's very hard for us to determine whether or not that's real. So I'm like, I don't know. Yeah, that to me is like, it's definitely a question. I don't know. I don't know, but I think it's certainly something that's like up in the air. We can't prove one way or the other. And then, back to the small folk really fast. I would say, like, so I think the small folk are, there's kind of a lesson here about the small folk, both like that we're supposed to feel kind of like morally like that's not okay to treat the small folk bad, but like also there's like some historical lessons there. So like the War of the Roses is a big war that's talked about a lot, but also Martin like pulls real heavy from like the 30 Years War, right? And the 30 Years War, like, I'm not a medieval historian. Don't quote me on this kind of shit. But I think it's like 50%, 60% of like the German population is like fucking killed. And it's around at the time of like the Little Ice Age. And there's even like a comet and stuff beforehand. And so like There's also like this, the small folk are just kind of like, they're just going to get rolled up. That's just what's going to happen to them in this book. Like, we already seen that. We already seen the small folk just get totally trashed. The poor small folk. But like, yeah, so it's like part of it I think is like, you know, the morality thing and like the storybook and like the ethos and like the anti-warness and whatnot. And then part of it's just like, that's happened in history. Like a lot of this stuff, there wasn't dragons and shit, but like, there was bad winners, bro. There was bad winners, and there was wild wars about religion, and there was comments. There was all that shit in real life. So, you know, I think that a lot of times the small folk are simply getting roasted because that's George R. R. Martin likes to read medieval history, or pre-modern history, right? You know. Okay, so another question. Let's see here. We talked about whether he's a eunuch or not. Let's see here. Oh yeah, and yeah, Big Hat Legion, exactly. Those little birds, part of the small folk, and they're part of the most vulnerable small folk too. Like, so I feel like it's just like, yeah, he didn't really give a shit, you know. Okay, here's a double-hearted question that I think we kind of talked about it a little bit before, but also it talked about little birds, and so I want to do this one. So if Varys is performing for Bloodraven, how did he get tipped off that Bloodraven was near all-seeing? What happens to little birds when they get older? Does Varys still use them, or does he kill them? Now, the first part of this question is one I actually, I kind of received this as a comment a lot. How does Varys know that Bloodraven would be being a Bloodraven? How would he know that he's either alive or able to see everything? And my first response would be that he's known as the Thousand Eyes in One, if I recall. And so I think it's in world lore, like it's canonical for people in like their day-to-day lives to view him as a crazy wizard, right? Like we talk about him as maybe not being a crazy wizard because we might think that he has X-Men powers and it's not magic, like if you buy into the Preston Jacobs thing, which is kind of where I sit. Or maybe we're just like his powers are, we think we know what they are, we think we know their extent, so like we view him as very quantifiable. But like that's not how he's viewed in the universe, right? He's not quantified that way. He is not viewed that way in the universe. So I think that that's why he's more known in the legend, and the legend is about him being all-seeing and all-knowing and being able to fuck up your shit no matter where you are, and that he's a crazy wizard and that nothing can stop him, and that, you know, right? And so, like, to me, it makes total sense that Varys would view him this way because, like, that's how everybody views him. So the argument would be like within a generation or whatever, a couple of generations, did people forget all of the legends about Bloodraven? And I don't think they're probably in books and shit, right? Like Varys, even if Varys was not a Blackfire, he'd probably be functionally completely aware of all of this, you know, in-world lore, you know? So that's why Yggdrasil, yeah, we're talking about Bloodraven, yeah. So because back in the day he's well known, right? Again he is blamed by people in the streets who have never talked to him and never met him for causing the Great Spring Sickness. Like things that are probably outside his extensive powers are actually attributed to him by randos in world. So the argument to me that people in world would not assume that he's an all-seeing sorcerer that's probably still alive because his body hasn't been cremated is not unreasonable. It's normal. Like, he disappears from the wall. So if you're a Blackfire hating knower about magic who's heard even the most bare bones stories about this guy, you'd probably conclude he's alive outside the wall being an awful wizard, right? Like, that'd be my first conclusion. I'm like, all right, I'm going to fight a wizard, and he's gone missing, and we've never seen his body, and we know he gets up into everyone's minds and dreams. What do I'm thinking? Oh, I think he's out there alive in everyone's minds and dreams. Do I know how? Fuck no, I'm not a wizard. But is that what I'm rolling with? Yes, I'm rolling with those assumptions, and then we're gonna hunt this guy down, right? Like, that to me is how Varys would be entering it, and I think, again, I kind of lean towards he does hate magic and stuff, and then he actually understands it, and he doesn't take it as a joke. He takes it seriously. He thinks that 1,000 Eyes in One is not fucking around. He thinks that this guy actually does see through every raven, which is why he puts wacky shit in front of the White Raven, you know? So that would be my kind of a approach to it. And And then what was the second half of the question? What happens to the little birds when they get older? Does Varys still use them, or does he kill them? So this is an interesting question because I've heard postulated the theory before that, for example, Bronn and Shay might have been little birds and maybe he changed up the tactics, or maybe they were little mice because they were mice before they were birds. If you remember the story where he kind of tells Tyrion, I think, or somebody about it. So like the kind of way I thought about it was, that's possible. It's possible these guys were agents beforehand and he's changed his tactics and then these agents from young age are kept on. But the thing about the silent thing is it makes me kind of wonder because I'm like, that's also very double-sided, right? Like it could be that their tongues are ripped out and so it's like they're kind of like they have a very hard time working in the normal world and all they've ever been done is to train to do spy work. So they're just like totally dependent on Varys forever. And maybe that means you can place them anywhere in the world. You can just put them in a bar anywhere and they just get a clean bar stools the rest of their life and sell intel back to Varys, once you're too old to break into houses or whatever. Or it could be that, yeah, he's got a very short-term intention for him, that he doesn't plan for them to live a long life. They don't need to talk because they ain't going to work outside of what he's doing. So, yeah, it could go either way. I don't know. George is kind of, he's very open-ended. So, again, there's always kind of multiple options. Like, what was it? I think it was Preston Jacobs again. Like, somebody brought up, like, George talking about, like, the ending of MacGyver, right? Or the ending of the death of the villain of MacGyver. And the death of the villain of MacGyver is that he falls down a well. Is he dead? Is he not? And it depends. Depends if we want to resurrect him for a future season, right? So I think that sometimes the answer to the questions about George R. R. Martin books is it true? Is it not true? Who knows? It's neither at this moment, but it could be either one, right? That's probably a way that I would think about it. So, let's see here. Other questions. What would the outcome be if Daenerys found out that Illyrio was playing two sides of the Blackfire Targaryen coin? I think that's going to get his ass roasted, personally. That's my opinion about Illyrio, is that Illyrio is going to get cooked up like his favorite meats and fed to a dragon. That's what I think his fate will be. Could be that's just Varys' fate, but I felt like that might be both their fate, to be quite honest. I mean, like, Varys is the one who brings up that somebody, I forget who, it's been a while, is fed to a dragon. Varys is like, oh, they fed them to a dragon, right? And we heard this story, and so it's like kind of, that could be foreshadowing, arguably. You could argue that that's kind of foreshadowing or something like that, that basically, that there's a that he's kind of telling you about his own fate or whatever. So I think that's definitely a potential. But I kind of feel like Illyrio has to get knocked off somehow, right? Oh, hang on one second. I got a comment from Dave. Hang on. What do you think about the implications of the fundamental Blackfire idea not being a Game of Thrones original idea? How do you think it changed things? So I talked about this a bit in my series where I think that this is maybe part of the secret reason behind why it takes so long to write the whole story. George starts off with what he wants to be a 3-parter. That shit rapidly grows to where it's definitely going to be like a 6 or 7 or maybe 8-parter or something, right? And then he also starts writing Dunk and Egg, which is supposed to be a 7-part series, I believe. And within that, he gets really deep into the Blackfires. And then the Blackfires start becoming a big part. They start becoming like a big part of the books, like, at least as I recall. They start really showing up, and the 4th and 5th book pop out. So, like, it seems like he went from like a 3-parter to like a 6-7-parter to like a 7-part series on the side that contributes to the main series now being like an 8 or 9-parter. That's how it feels. And maybe I'm wrong. Sorry, I'm like rearranging shit over here, so if I sound all weird. Maybe I'm wrong, but like that's kind of the impression that I got, is that like, what does Tolkien say? Like the tale grew in the telling or whatever. Like that seems to be what happened. The tale grew in the telling, and it grew in ways that were pretty unmanageable without more story. I disagree with the theory that the story is unmanageable or it can't be told, or it's all bullshit. You know, you can tell any story fucking wise as long as you're smart enough to figure it out. But can you go from a story that could be completed within your lifetime to a story that's just fucking really, really big and much harder to complete? Yeah, I think you could do that, you know? And so he probably has done that. That's probably what's happened. And so, like, not that he doesn't fuck around a lot. It seems like he does. And like, who wouldn't, right? Like you're like not famous your whole life, and now you could just like have all the money in the world and you can just like fuck around and do whatever you want. Like, why wouldn't you? You know, I mean, fuck them books, you know. let's live some life, son. You know? But at the same time, right? Like, I feel like he does probably sit around and work on it a lot, and it's probably difficult to weave it all together. So that's what I would say is about the whole series. You know, if I had to. But that's all theory. I have no fucking idea. I'm not George, right? You know, everyone speculates on like all this, what's George doing, right? No one's George, you know, so no one really knows. It's just people trying to figure out what George is doing. Let's see here. We got another one. Not sure if you covered this yet or not, but what do you think Varys and Illyrio plan for Dany's dragons? Okay, so yeah, I did mention this one, but it was the very first question of the video, I think. Maybe not. I don't know. It was early on, though. So, point is that I don't believe they knew about the dragons. I think that all of their actions implies that they had no idea that dragons were going to hatch, and that Dany and her brother were originally intended to be the villains in their stage performance, that were going to show up and terrorize Westeros with their Dothraki riders, and that was going to be really antagonizing and piss everybody off, and that young Griff was going to come in and sweep them aside and be the good king, savior, yada, yada, yada. So I think, to me, the eggs are a bartering chip. You got to remember that Illyrio has, like, unlimited priceless trinkets that could buy a kingdom. He's just, like, stupidly wealthy, you know? And there's a lot of people in that world that are just unbelievably stupidly wealthy, right? You know, and he's one of them. And so I don't think that he needs another trinket. I think he just, they're not necessarily worth any more to him than any other trinket he's got. And so what they are worth to him something as a bargaining chip. He can take those eggs and he can approach even a more or less a monarch like Khal Drogo and be like, look at this, look what we got. We got a real gift here, a kingly gift. And the other thing about it is that it shows legitimacy in whichever way you want, right? So if you like the Targaryens, you'll look at these eggs as a legitimacy of Targaryens. You'll be like, oh, yes, of course. These eggs show us that she's truly a dragon woman. Because Targaryens equals dragons, right? But if you check out the Cushing stuff, you'll notice that George had in the original writings that the Blackfires had a clutch of dragon's eggs, and it's in some of the lore that eggs were stolen and lost and blah blah blah. And so the Blackfires appear to canonically have some dragon's eggs. So if you wanted to signal that you were Blackfires, a clutch of eggs is the ideal way to do it. So it's like a really great gift because it says whatever the fuck you want it to say to anybody. It's like any side that you're trying to convince of your legitimacy will look at that and go, yep, checks all the boxes for me. You know? So that's what I love about the dragon's eggs, and that's what I think Illyrio loves with the dragon's eggs, and that's why I think he was using them to do that. So that's my overall theory on it, is that like, for example, the Tyroshi try to marry into the Blackfire line by marrying Daemon Blackfire. The Archon of Tyrosh is there at the wedding, and everyone's always like, Tyrosh, why? Well, because Tyrosh courts the Blackfires. And so what did those eggs say to the Archon of Tyrosh, or his brother, or whatever, who's at the wedding? Well, they say, we're Blackfires. We're legitimate. Look at the eggs. What do the eggs say to Khal Drogo? They say, we're Targaryens. We're legitimate. Look at the eggs. You know? So they're a wonderful thing because it's kind of an extension of that power resides, or people think it resides, kind of nonsense, you know, but a little bit different. All right, let's see here. Let's go find another question here. I'm gonna look and see if one of these other videos happen to have some questions. It's gonna take me just a moment to look for more questions here. So if anybody wants to put a question in chat, happy to answer one. Oh, wait, here we go. So if the house with the red door was on Illyrio's estates, why stop housing Viserys and Daenerys there? And then why was Dany told the house was actually in Braavos? So this is kind of a complicated one, and there's a lot of theories. There's a lot of theories about the House of the Red Door being in a lot of places. Dorne, I've heard, is a highly likely one. I always thought that when Tyrion rode with Illyrio through the fields and shit, and all those like farm area houses and plantation zones he owns, it just sounded very similar to the way that the grass and all that stuff was described. Like, we just don't see a lot of grass in Dorne. It seemed like there was plenty of grass where Illyrio owned all these estates. And so I always leaned towards that, right? So that's kind of how you got to understand this question, is that I lean towards the House of the Red Door being owned by Illyrio and being on one of these estates that him and Tyrion ride past, that he owns all this huge tracts of lands and stuff. So basically, to answer the question, why would he kick them out if he owned the House with the Red Door? Varys and Illyrio doing a performance, putting on their performance, is as much about them forcing you to play a role or traumatizing you into a role as it is them putting on the performance, right? So, like, my guess is that it was part of the whole experience so this maybe I'm reading too deep into it, but like, there's two sides to right? There's two sides to Viserys. Daenerys says this. Daenerys is like, I remember Viserys would hold me in the thunderstorms or whatever and like not be an asshole, but then also he was really horrible, like, and he did all these things, and she kind of equates the horribleness as having like an upward trajectory that matches the downward trajectory of their lives, and as they gradually lose the property that reminds them of their mother, right? So they lose their mother's stuff, they lose all their things, they lose all their identity, and I mean, fuck rich people or whatever. Like, I'm not trying to defend, richness being your identity or anything like that, but very formative on their life, very traumatic experience, right? For them, it's like the whole world is destroyed, right? And I think that was somewhat facilitated. Like, how is it possible that these heirs to the big-ass throne the biggest throne across the sea, how is they never found a court that would take them in? Really? That doesn't make a lot of sense. Like that makes very little sense. And the hired knives were clearly a bunch of bullshit, right? Like, the hired knives were clearly a bunch of bullshit. Obviously there were no knives after them. The only time that any assassin ever comes close to killing Daenerys or her brother, and it's not even her brother, it's her, is the poisoner sent by Varys, right? The one that he totally has control over, but he tells Ned, too late. The Ravens have already, I got no control. Sorry, bro. No way. Total trash, total nonsense. He absolutely could have pulled the strings on that one instantly. But he doesn't want to. He doesn't want to. Again, because everything, to me, there's a solid argument that everything in their early lives was meticulously crafted to drive Viserys insane and to make Daenerys malleable and basically ready to be, married off and into their scheme, right? And this is why her not going that direction and her having some gumption and some fight and whatever you want to say, but her breaking those chains, like to use the language of the book or whatever, that's a problem for them because their whole thing was to traumatize these people brutally until one of them went crazy and the other one was willing to submit to marrying a Dothraki king and, basically rolling up with an army on the former kingdom because that was how they were going to build their villains. Those are the villains of their play. Their play has a hero, young Griff, and it has villains, Daenerys and her brother, the Mad King's children, and their evil Dothraki, right? Those terrible, bad, not from around here people. It's what's a classic one of those, And the Dothraki aren't fun. Like, you don't want the Dothraki rolling up on you, like, any more than you necessarily wanted, like, Genghis Khan rolling up on you. Or like read about Baghdad getting sacked by the Mongols. Like, it ain't a good time to be fucking around, in certain eras of, of combat or ethics or whatever. But the point being is that there's, the Dothraki are being preyed upon here too, because their foreignness is being taken advantage of to make them out to be something even more terrifying, an existential threat. And that's what Daenerys and her brother would need to be. And you got to make them mad. You got to kind of make them a little crazy. And so for me, like, that's why they could never find anywhere to go, is because they probably never left Pentos, to be quite honest. Like, the reason why she has no idea what Braavos looks like, she's never fucking been to Braavos. Easy answer, right? Like, so she's never fucking been to Braavos because probably she was raised in this house, right, for a little while. And they keep him hidden on the DL long enough for things to calm down. And they then poison their fucking bodyguard or whatever, or they do some other stuff, and then they start traumatizing them. They traumatize the shit out of them. They throw them out of the house, and they probably literally just run them around Pentos. My guess is they just ran them around Pentos for years. From safe house to safe house, from pretend court to pretend mansion that Illyrio owns to pretend court to pretend mansion that Illyrio owns. And the whole time, why would you ever let them out of your power? You have them in your power, right? They sail over. You've got control. And again, and this is building on the idea that the House of the Red Door is owned by Illyrio. If it's not owned by Illyrio, this theory doesn't pan out the same way. So you don't have to view it as credible outside that assumption. If that assumption is true, though, let's if we pretend for a moment that the House of the Red Door is an Illyrio property, then I don't believe for a minute they ever left Pentos. They were on that property. They were taken from that property. They were shuffled around Pentos in a series of places that Illyrio owned, and they were bullshitted into thinking they'd been taken from court to court or whatever. And maybe they spent a couple nights on a boat or some shit below decks, as it rocked back and forth in harbor, tethered to the docks. Like that's what I think is going on there. Like, I don't think that they were actually... Dany does speak High Valyrian, the Tyrashi accent. That's true. Who taught her to speak High Valyrian? Who was she trained by? Who were they around? And the Tyrashi, again, are part of this conspiracy because the Archon of Tyrash's brother is there at the wedding, and he's getting the signal from the Blackfire eggs. So, to me, it all pans out. Again, I'm not saying it's true. You don't have to believe me. I'm just saying that all the pieces fit. So that's how it would all work out. Is the Tyrashi are Blackfire supporters? At least they were. They tried to marry Daemon Blackfire. Rohan of Tyrosh is his wife, right? And they try to marry again into the dynasty power, but they get rebuked with the Targaryens, if I recall correctly. I have it in my theory. In the theory video, it explains it better because the picture it paints to me is that Tyrosh tries to court the Westerosi crown and fails, but succeeds to court the Blackfires. And so they, in my opinion, are doubling down on where they succeeded, not where they had failed, right? Like, why go to where you failed when you can go to where you already had success? Like, again, Rohan of Tyrosh, they already have the blood. Why go somewhere else, right? Why, of course, Daenerys is being taught by someone who speaks Tyrashi or whatever. Of course, Daenerys is exposed to Tyrashi. The Tyrashi are peripherally supporters of this plot. They're also doing Tyrashi things, and they have their own agenda and their own bullshit or whatever. Like, I don't think that the whole life of Tyrosh is to do this plot, but I think it's important enough that the Archon sends his brother. So that's the argument I'd put forward. Okay. So how does the Aurane Woods being historical Blackfire supporters, but the implications of Doran laying with Tyrosh work in this? What side is Doran on? Doran's an interesting question, right? So the question becomes, to what degree is Doran playing the game? Yeah? Like, if you think he's very stupid, maybe his alliance with Tyrosh is him leaking information on his own ass to the Illyrio cause, right? Maybe he's just not smart, right? If he's 10-dimensional chess, then of course keep your enemies' friends close, because then you can have access to all their shit. So I don't know. That's a hard one. I'm not a mad Doran expert, to be quite honest. I kind of tend to, again, a lot of times I fall on a lot of things that Preston Jacobs says, not entirely, but like, if Taco said he thinks Preston is right 50-50, I think Preston's right like 70-30, 60-40, something like that. I think that the Deeper Doran series, if not all true, you could even chop out half of what Deeper Doran says. If only half of it's true, then Doran is pretty much ahead of the ball, right? He's very far ahead of the ball, So there's two kind of ways to look at Doran, and I think either way, whether he's ahead of the ball or behind the ball, I think it's reasonable for him to court Tyrosh. And the other thing is that I don't think Tyrosh is married to one agenda. I think Tyrosh is playing with the people who they played well with in the past, but I don't think it would make or break the ruling family of Tyrosh, nor do I think it would make or break anything about the Tyroshi to have any plan they're backing fall apart, right? Like, if the Blackfire succeed, the Tyroshi stand to gain outsized influence in the court of Westeros. That's not such a lofty goal that they can't afford to, let that goal die if it means, bettering their position. So that's probably how I would look at the Tyroshi and all that. And then Doran, I think, is, you can either view him as ahead of the game, in which case he's making friends and making associates because he's duping everybody, or you can view him as behind the game and he's making friends and associates that are duping him. Yeah, Yggdrasil, I tend to agree. I don't like Dumb Doran, because Dumb Doran is what the book presents in kind of a ham-fisted way, right? Like, there's a lot of good literary analysis that points to it being true, and I've heard quite credible arguments from good creators that it's totally true. You kind of gotta take him at face value. He's late to the party. He's like the Joe Biden of Westeros, I've heard it, but I don't necessarily agree. I just think that makes for a very boring story by comparison, versus if he's way ahead of the ball, but still guaranteed to fail somehow because of who he inherently is as a character and because of elements outside of his control. I feel like that makes it a little bit more Martin, and it kind of puts him on the same level as someone like Varys, But, yeah, that's a hard one. That's a hard one. I would say watch the Deeper Dorn, and get your opinions about the Deeper Dorn. And then, come back and be like, I watch the Deeper Doran. That's what I would say. But is if you want a good Yoren dive, a good Yoren dive. If you want a good Yoren dive, watch the Doran series. No, if you want a poor Yoren dive but an excellent Doran dive, watch the Deeper Doran. Lannister succession in the Varys scheme. Tyrek. Okay, so I think that this is interesting. The obvious candidate that everybody points to that has some pretty credible evidence for the Tyrek kidnapping, assuming that Tyrek wasn't simply made into a bowl of brown, which is a very likely option. We kind of forget that as likely as Tyrek is a horse, he's equally likely a bowl of brown, right? Perhaps more likely. But so the thing is that Littlefinger is the one that we point to, yeah? Like, he's the one that we go, oh, he organized the riot, because there's a pretty good argument. Like, it's pretty obvious that he organizes the riot, and he probably is feeding the crowd or whatever to get them to riot, like the garlic breath and all that. Like, well, where are they getting the garlic? Maybe they're so hungry they're eating cloves of garlic, but like maybe he's been feeding them some garlic bread on the side, right? You know, I don't know. Who knows? Yeah. Maybe Tyrek and the horse got made into brown. This is a viable theory, but so let's assume that he's not. Let's assume that he's not been. Let's assume that he's not gone the way of the comedian singer that Tyrion put into soup. And that he has lived. I think it's much more likely that he's in Littlefinger's power, But that doesn't mean he's outside of Varys' power entirely. Again, if you think of Littlefinger as, let's say Littlefinger wins his objectives. Littlefinger accomplishes every objective. He checks every box. It's all green. No one stops him. He never gets stabbed, and he literally marries Sansa, which is gross, but he does it. He pulls it off. He Jeff Epstein's that shit. Let's just say he does it, right? He's a monster, and everyone hates him, and he's got a criminal record that everyone can prove a mile long, and he's like this disgusting, horrible creature, right? Like, Varys can do whatever he wants with that. So Varys could say, all right, I'll let you live, but you gotta pony up. Where's all your wards? So to me, it's like that's he has Littlefinger in a very bad position, in that Littlefinger, even if he gets away with it, is committing a bunch of murder and crime that Varys knows about. It's like, even if he succeeds, he still is locked into some kind of negotiation with Varys' factions or Varys' side, no matter what. Yeah, the disputed succession, it's definitely who runs House Lannister is going to matter. And so, but again, Littlefinger might be thinking about that ahead of himself. He probably knows his own position will need to be bartered about in later life. He's probably like, yeah, I'm evil. I'm terrible. I do bad, and people don't like me. But I'm going to get away with it because I have bartering chips, right? So that's probably how Littlefinger is looking at it, but I don't know. That's a difficult one. Again, I just think it plays the same either way. Whether or not Littlefinger is doing it to take someone out of Varys' power, whether he's doing it to get himself bartering chips, they're never actually out of Varys' power, because Varys has leverage over Littlefinger permanently. And again, Littlefinger is boasting, right? He's boasting, but he's not serious. He doesn't really mean it when he says that he holds Varys' balls in the palm of his hand, right? He's lying, because the moment the administration flips to a Varys-friendly administration, he no longer has any leverage. What, Littlefinger's going to come in front of young Griff, who's a newly chosen Varys as Master of Whisperers, and be like, "My lord, who I don't necessarily know very well, your Master of Whisperers is a real douche. You should kill him." And that's going to get Littlefinger not immediately murdered? No, I don't think so. I think he would be immediately killed on the spot, right? For slander. But if he can negotiate, well, then, maybe he's safe, right? So that's kind of how I see it. I'm sure Littlefinger knows that. I'm sure Varys knows that. I'm sure that Littlefinger is simply bullshitting when he tells Ned or whatever that he's got leverage over Varys. He's full of shit, he knows that Varys holds the upper hand if there's an administrative flip-flop, If there's not, then they're in an equal position. They're both just really useful pawns to the crown, They're just useful agents of the crown. Neither one can probably stab at each other very effectively. But the moment Aegon's in power, that dichotomy ends, right? It goes away. So that's what I would say about that. All right, let's see here. I believe House Lannister is going the route of the Tarbecks. Wouldn't that be funny? I mean, like, I do think that that's Tywin's legacy. I've seen a lot of videos on the net about how, like, Tywin was actually, like, really based. And, like, there's plenty about how he wasn't based or whatever, too, which is, I think, a more reasonable position. But I always think it's funny, the people who think he's really based or whatever, because I'm just like, yeah, that was based, you know, just like destroy your house's legacy and estrange yourself from your own vassals and put yourself in allegiance with king after king that couldn't be sustained. It's based. Okay, yeah, sure, why not? Sure, good point. You know, like I view Tywin as grotesquely incompetent because he's like too So at one point, somebody calls Stannis. Who the hell is it? Somebody calls Stannis. I think it's the blacksmith at Castle Black, right? I think it's the blacksmith calls Stannis the iron. He's too brittle. He's like, Robert's the true steel. He can bend and not break. Renly's the copper. He's flashy, and Stannis is the iron. He can't bend. He'll break, right? So I don't like this definition of Stannis. I think that that's a flawed understanding of Stannis, number one. But in a weird way, this is actually a better understanding of Tywin, right? Tywin might be pretty good at bullshitting you about how he's flexing, but he does not. He in fact cannot ever let anything go. He's unwavering, unyielding, and he'll hold a grudge till the day he sends his son to the wall on some bullshit charges. You know, the man cannot bend. Like the man is just a fucking asshole to the core. And he's relentless about being a piece of shit, right? He's like a dog. You can't shake the fucker off being a piece of shit, right? So to me, he's a really bad leader and a really bad household leader, specifically because the idea of the non-bender, the true iron is Lannister. Tywin is not of gold. He is of iron, right? And that's like his position on warfare. Wars are won with iron, not with gold or with words. Or we use swords because I never bend, because I can't negotiate, because I'm a douche. You know, that's his position. That's who he is, a giant douche. And so I kind of disagree with a lot of the interpretations of Tywin out there. Yeah, he couldn't bend, but he could squat. Yeah. No, and I'm probably, maybe that's overstating certain elements, but in the same way I'm arguing that it's not applicable to Stannis because, yeah, he's got some flaws, but he can bend. I would say that Tywin is viewed in too much as a flexing character that can work shit out and is too much of a strategic, 8-dimensional chess genius, when in reality he should be thought of a little bit more of a non-compromising asshole. He's kind of just a non-compromising piece of shit, right? Like, that's kind of what he is. And that can get you places, but it will generally get you to unstable places, right? And that's where he found himself. He found himself in an unstable place, not being able to move his bowels because everybody hated him. Everybody, the whole world could not stand his ass, and he needed to die, right? So that's how I would interpret Tywin. Let's see here. Do you think the Hightowers would side with Aegon and Griff? Yeah, it's an interesting question. The Hightowers are survivors, first and foremost, I think. Like, that's kind of like their historic position in the story, I feel like. They tend to figure out how to bend the knee, right? Maybe they want the power or whatever, but like they got burned during the Dance of the Dragons and shit. During the House of the Dragon, they got burned in House of the Dragon. No, but they got burned in the Dance of the Dragons, and they've been burned a couple times before that, to be fair, which is why they were pissed off, trying to gripe for power or whatever, like I'm sure that House Hightower in their whole history, they probably always wanted more or whatever, but they're also happy to just take what they got and not be eliminated. So I feel like they'd probably concede, but I also feel like they're probably going to get murked by Euron, right? Like Euron's probably going to roll up and, bring that Hightower low. That's kind of what I guess would happen. I mean, maybe not, but he probably has the power, right, to not with magic, I don't think, but like with bombing shit. Like he probably could bomb the tower down with all of the power of the Lannisters, you know, because I'm guessing they have explosives in the Citadel. They gotta train Maesters how to do chemistry and stuff, and like, you know, who knows? But that I think that might be an interesting end to the High Towers. Is that Leighton and his daughter are in the High Tower, right? If I recall correctly, and so they'll probably lock themselves up there and not want to come down. Maybe they can't come down. Who knows? Maybe the tower. I don't know. The tower is sitting out on an island in the bay. I kind of forget where it is. If it's on the land and you can just access it. I don't have like a map in front of me, but you know, perhaps the tower gets surrounded and they're trapped up there. You know, and then they can't get down, and then he blows the tower up or whatever. You know, be kind of interesting. But I feel like he's just such a destructive force that he's got to knock the tower down, right? I'm like, wouldn't you knock the tower down if you were like an evil, sadistic man-child who just, you know, loved to be like a storybook villain? Wouldn't you knock the tower down? Wouldn't that be like one of your biggest objectives, to like push that shit over? Like that'd be one of my biggest objectives. So I'd say I think that's where he's going. Yeah, Leighton and the Mad Maid. There we go. Melora. Malera. I can't. I don't have glasses on. I can't read it quite well. But either way, yeah, they're up in the tower. So let's see. Let me get another question here. Let's see what other kind of questions we got going on in the series. If I can get back to these fucking videos. My internet connection here is quite terrible. Quite terrible. Someone says, I wish there wasn't so much Danny Essos crap left for George to write. I actually love the Danny Essos stuff. It's weird, but I like it. Some of the best stuff that happens in Essos. It can get kind of like off in the weeds, but like it also is really good. You know. Let's see here. I'm kind of scrolling through the videos, looking for the questions right now. I guess I'll just go back to the Q&A list. I know there's a bunch in the videos, so I'm just like, we already answered that one. Okay, so here's one we got. Okay. So there's a lot of elaboration I'm not going to read, but the base question we can talk about is weird question, but would it be cool to ask or you know, try to figure out why did Viserys sell Daenerys Blackfire to the Dothraki? Like why was that even required? Why was that process required in general? Is I think kind of the gist of the question. And so what I would say about like why is this process required in general is again that he's got to stage some kind of performance, right? That's just like what he does. He's a mummer, you know. And when you're thinking about unifying the kingdom around a leader, right? There's like two big problems. One is no one liked the previous king, and the other one is you don't want to make local houses villains, right? Because like, hang on, I'm gonna change my seating arrangement here so I can lower my microphone and sit down. But the point being is like, you don't want to make houses that you're going to be hanging out with the next day into villains, right? So fundamentally, in order for his plan to succeed, he needs like a series of things to occur. One is he needs to have some kind of outside antagonistic force that everyone can unify around. And then two, you know, he needs to have some sort of person that can be unified around that's not associated with the Mad King. And then three, he needs everyone to believe they're a Targaryen, not a Blackfire, right? So this to me is pretty well accomplished by using the Dothraki army and the Mad King's kids in juxtaposition to Rhaegar's kid, right? Everyone loves Rhaegar. It's a good thing. but it's still the old dynasty. We love the old dynasty. All our traditions are based on the old dynasty. Everything's about the old dynasty. We love this. We just, it's Marge Simpson. We just think they're neat. We just love the old dynasty, right? The king is great. Couldn't imagine life without him, And so I think that's, it was like what Jimmy Morris says. It's the prince who returned to their rightful place. Exactly. And he wins a heroic battle and against the forces of evil. And so clearly he has a right to rule because he has had a victory. And this is the story of who? This is the story of our best boy, Aegon the Conqueror. And we all love Aegon the Conqueror. Again, the king is great. Couldn't imagine life without him. How do you even talk about Westeros without talking about good old Eggy the Conky? Eggy the Conk. That's the best boy, Like, we love him. And so, to me, it's a very easy thing not easy thing to do, but easy thing for Varys to come up with, right? We have to make an Aegon the Conqueror happen again. And what better way to make Aegon the Conqueror happen than to make Aegon the Conqueror happen when the kingdom just desperately crying out for a king because the Mad King's son is terrorizing the realm with his horde of people who aren't from around here. Nothing gets everyone together like people who aren't from around here and mad people we don't like, right? It's just an easy selling point, and to me, it's like I said, it's very manipulative, but it's a very easy selling point. Well, I kind of think there might be... Uh-oh. There's problems with the stream. Stream problems. Okay. I can't tell if the stream is still going or not. Someone in the chat tell me if the stream is still going or not, because I cannot tell if it is still going. It looks like it's still going, but I can't really see. So yeah, if anyone's there in the chat, let me know. Let me know. Tell me if the stream is still going. Okay, cool. Sorry, the whole thing cut out for me on my end, and I was just like, oh Lord, it's all destroyed. Oh no. So I don't stream very often. You can tell. So this is not the normal stuff for me. So Dave asks, what is going to be the next sequel to The Hoster Tully Was Aborted? What's your next wild but obviously accurate take in hindsight? To be honest, I don't really know. I didn't have a lot of mad good theories specifically. What kind of inspired the Littlefinger thing was that there just weren't any good Littlefinger videos out there. At least I didn't think there was any ones that were super good. And so I was like, oh, I wonder if I dig into this, maybe I can figure out what's going on here. And then I came up with a fun tinfoil theory, like on top of that, But yeah, I'm not really sure exactly what's coming up. I did want to kind of return to Littlefinger because I felt like I spent some time on it in one of the videos, but it was like only a portion of a video, and I thought maybe I could explain it better. Like the idea that the War of the Five Kings is actually not chaos at all. It's like calculation. So, to better explain this theory, to start off, it's. I know this is. We're getting off away from Varys and Illyrio, but we'll actually touch on them very briefly, So we'll have some connection back. But to make the Littlefinger thing make sense, right? There's a bunch of plots already a-brewing, right? Like if we buy into the idea that Littlefinger just likes power because power is good, then why on earth does he not simply ally with all the people who are already doing schemes? Like, he's a very useful dude. Clearly, he can do things that help other people, or at least make them think they're being helped, right? Like, he gets a hold of the Harrenhal by, kind of mock helping the Lannisters, right? Helping them to their grave, But the point is that they believe that he's helping them. They think that he's brokering this bitchin' deal and that everything's coming up Millhouse, right? So he gets a reward of that, from that. He gets a reward from that. And so to me, it's like, if the answer is he just wants power, that's all he wants, why involve the Starks at all? Why involve the Riverlands at all? Why not just immediately help Renly usurp the throne and then take a bitchin' position in his new cabinet? You know he'd give you one. Like there's just no reason for. Or let's say that you don't like Renly. Let's say that you're forward thinking. You don't believe the Baratheon throne is long for this world. You think it's gonna get cooked because you like Moonman suggests you're smart, like Stannis. You know Aegon's gonna return. You know this Baratheon thing is just a blip in the 3 centuries plus old Targaryen story. You know it's not gonna last, right? Why don't you court Varys? Doesn't make any sense, right? So like why don't you why do you, if you want power and you want influence and you want money, well, first of all, you already have all those things. So what the fuck are we talking about? What are we even griping about now? Like, he wants to be a lord. Okay, he wants to be a lord. All right, easy, boom. Help anybody else in the realm. Fucking just ask Robert for a lordship. He'd give you one. Like Robert would simply now. If Littlefinger though wants something more specific than just power or a lordship, then we have problems, right? Then we have issues. Then we need plots. Then we have Littlefinger, you know? But like, to me it's like, you know, there's no reason for Littlefinger to conduct his own plotting and scheming and make his own bullshit happen. Zero reason. He can profit off if he just wants power, right? If he wants a lordship, if he wants a name for himself, if he wants money, if he wants fame, all of these things can be attained by simply forwarding Renly's position on the throne, right? And again, if you're forward thinking and you believe the Baratheon dynasty is not long for this world, then you can simply forward Varys' position. So why does he have a story? Why is he doing these things? Why does he try to make the Starks and the Lannisters, the 2 factions literally that have never gone into any sort of antagony for like several fucking decades, if not centuries? Like, why? Why are we doing this? Why? They don't have a history of antagony. They don't have, you know, they don't have any sort of really reason to fight each other. They have nothing. Zero reason to fight each other. And moreover, if you let's say that you just think he just wants Harrenhal and he needs a war to get it, right? Why are you using the Starks and the Lannisters? Why not just simply localize a civil war in the Riverlands? You could probably do that, right? Or you could localize a Lannister fucking Riverlands conflict. You know what I mean? Like, maybe, I don't know. That might be a little bit harder, but the point is that it is incredibly fucking specific, like unimaginably specific, to grab bag the 2 least likely to conflict powers that just happen to border the Riverlands and get them to go to war through like an enormous amount of effort. Like, one must have an agenda, you know, and it's clearly not about power, right? The power has nothing to do with this shit. It's about revenge. It's about destroying the Riverlands, right? You know, it's about destroying the Riverlands. Yeah, the County Monte Cristo thing comes to mind, right? Yeah, the County Monte Cristo, it's not about being Count, right? It's about getting revenge. That's the perfect metaphor. One of the perfect metaphors for this is that the money and the fame and the power are completely fucking irrelevant to the agenda. And he has to go through so much to make sure that these factions go to war before shit pops off with the other factions, right? Like, he has to somehow manage the destruction of the Riverlands before Renly's forces can confront the Lannisters. That's an epic timetable. Like, if you're a military strategic planner, you work on like timetables, right? Like, I don't know how many of you guys like study like war and shit, but like when you read about the Eastern Front, you read a book like Enemy at the Gates, right? Everyone knows Enemy at the Gates in the movie, right? Well, Enemy at the Gates is a book, you know what I mean? So it was a book beforehand, and one of the big things you're following in the book
is like the timetable of like OKW, like Oberkommando der Wehrmacht, like I can't speak German, but like the High Command of the Wehrmacht. You're following like the time. They have objectives, and like they have to get these things done by a certain time. And so like for high level strategic planning, the timetable is massively important. So what Littlefinger is pulling off here is a timetable of like unimaginable like strategic excellence. Like this guy's fucking genius. In terms of his high level strategic planning, in terms of his ability to manage a conflict. This is incredible. This is not chaos. This is coordination of the highest possible degree. And that's what I mean, is like he's like, in my opinion, again, because like when you read about big operations and shit, like that should take so much planning, like to get wars to look a certain way. And wars are complex. The most well-planned strategic operations generally end in utter fucking failure, right? You know, like, you know, or the old adage, like, you know, the plan never survives contact with the enemy comes true. For Littlefinger, this is not true. Littlefinger not only manages to manufacture a plan that can survive contact with reality, but he manages to pull it off. Like, at the end of his story arc, the Riverlands is destroyed. House Tully is destroyed. The Starks are destroyed. He has Sansa. Like, by his own definitions of victory, he's basically won. You know, like, maybe he has some other... I don't know. Because essentially, the point where he's at is he has to win the post-war now. He has to make sure that his gains can be kept. But, like, he fucking won. And so... Just for me, like it's just a masterful thing, and so to me, it's like what Littlefinger has done is the highest level of strategic planning. It's not chaos. So I know this is an enormous, insane rant, right? But that was my answer to that whole thing. Is that like what I want to do a video about in the future is I kind of want to go back. And I kind of want to go back and talk about that and be like, this cannot be looked at as chaos. Like, you can talk about maybe we're in chaos now. Like, now that his plan is done, he doesn't know where the chips are going to fall now. We're in the chaos phase. But the plan itself, no. I refuse to concede that the most carefully orchestrated conflict in the series we've seen thus far that required meticulous decades of planning is chaos. That is careful constructed planning, you know, like. So that was my answer to that question. So we're approaching like the 2 hour and a half mark here. I'm getting close. That's about all the stream time I'm gonna have it in me, to be quite honest. I got to eat food. I have lasagna. It's just like screaming my name like I'm Garfield. And so I think what we're gonna do is we'll take one more question from the chat and then one more question from the board here, because I know that Jeremy Morris wanted to ask a question. So. Didn't you have some ideas about the Faithless Men? Might be fun if you want to talk about it. I might have had some thoughts. I'd have to kind of go back and think about it. Honestly, I had like a bit of a year or so where I kind of was not really focused much on Ice and Fire, and I'd have to kind of go back and review some of my thoughts and stuff. The Faithless Men would be interesting, but if I recall, when I did the poll to decide on which series to do next, Varys and Illyrio or the Faithless Men were like the two options that I think were the ones that I was most interested in. But I was really like, I had no idea what I was going to say about Varys and Illyrio, because I'm like, fuck, man, what do you say? Everyone's already said everything. And then I kind of realized that a good thing that you could say was that everyone's already said anything, but of what's been said, there's a couple theories here that make sense, and we can actually kind of weave them together. So for the Faceless Men, I'm like, I wanted to kind of do what the Littlefinger dive and just kind of dive in from square one, not really having a conclusion, not really necessarily thinking about what I'm going to find or having any thoughts or stuff like that, and just kind of seeing what I come up with, you know, which is kind of how I did Littlefinger. So that's that. If I do the Faceless Men, that'll be how I go about it. Is I will dive in from square one, and I'll just try to read all the Faceless Men appearances, and I'll just try to read all the references, and I'll probably try to see, because I liked Preston Jacobs' Faceless Men series, to be quite honest. I thought he had a lot of good Faceless Men arguments, and they pretty much all held water. So it'd probably would be a bit if it would be going back and examining that too, and being like, we got some other theories out here in the world. Do they make sense? Do those theories make sense? Okay, so one more question from the Q&A list, and then we're going to call it good. Let's see here. We got one from Dr. Jesus, which is a joke question. What's up with that Varys guy? He's kind of weird. So I'll already answer this one very seriously. I don't think it's a very big secret that Ice and Fire has a lot to do with the themes and the thematic arcs and, blah, 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 literary talk for nerds about revenge, right? Martin's work in general deals with this a lot. This is why I turned to Unsound Variations to try to decode Littlefinger, because it's one of a few that are great, but I think it's like very concise revenge story that paints exactly how George R. Martin feels about revenge, right? He kind of has the, what's that? The best revenge is living your life in a good way or whatever. Because I don't know if you guys read Unsound Variations, but the end of Unsound Variations is the guy's kind of having some problems with his wife or girlfriend or whatever, and he gets given the opportunity to do a time machine, but the time machine will kill his body, and so his wife will be left with his dead body, but he'll get a new life, right? And so whether or not the guy's serious or not, I don't think so. I think Bunnish would have fucked him over personally, because Bunnish is evil, and Bunish's whole thing is revenge. And even though Bunnish is the richest guy and they've ever met in their entire lives, owns like a James Bond compound and a time machine, he's never happy. He kills himself over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, trying to go back in time and play the perfect game of chess against his former friends in life, to ruin their lives to get revenge on them because they laughed at him in a chess tournament, right? So George paints a pretty fucking grim picture of revenge. It's murdering yourself over and over and over again in a game you could never win to fuck over people that otherwise could be your friends. That's revenge to George, at least in that story. And the main character picks to not use the time machine and to tell his wife that he loves her and that they're going to try to go to therapy or some shit, or they're going to do something. They're going to work on their marriage. Life's not perfect, but we got something good. We got each other, and we're going to do with this shit. We're going to do with this shit what we want to do. We're not going to let time dreams dictate, what we should do, And so, that is, I think, is the antithesis of Littlefinger. Littlefinger is, he's the Bruce Bunnish, Pattaya Baelish is Bruce Bunnish. Don't know how else to say that more clearly. But that's yeah. So that's that to me is that's a major theme in George's shit, right? Big George R. R. Martin thing. That thing is Varys too. For Varys, it's a different angle. I think it was Alt-Shift-X had the best explanation of Varys I'd ever heard. Where they're like, what if he's doing everything for family? What if it's all out of love of his family and of this belief that, they were brought low and that he's trying to help everybody and make things right, and he's willing to sacrifice his own whole life to just kind of put his family back where they should be in his mind. But it's still a revenge story, right? It's a twisted love revenge story. It's a very Martin story, you know what I mean? So that to me is how I'd answer that question. I would say that is what Varys is. That's what's up with that guy. He is a revenge from misguided beliefs story, like so many of our characters that we see, in this song of the ice and the fire and such. And with that, I think I'm going to jump off the stream because I am extraordinarily hungry.
I need to get some water, and you know, I just think it's time to take this stream to dry land. So thank you for everybody for dropping by. That was very, very nice to see everybody. There was a super chat earlier too. I want to say thank you for that also. That's definitely very, very nice. I always appreciate that. Because obviously YouTube doesn't pay you tons of money or nothing for your videos when you don't have millions of subscribers. So it's always nice to when people toss a coin to their Witcher and all that sort of stuff. So I might do a stream again in the future, coming up next couple weeks. Not really sure when or what about, but you know, I will figure out some idea if I have one. And then at some point, I was going to sit down with Taco from the beginning of the stream, and we were actually going to talk about a really interesting topic that I'm going to only use the live stream footage for parts of it. But we're going to talk about the Wiki of Ice and Fire, because he found something really interesting about it, which is that, I don't want to give away the whole piece of the video, but it's that it for early books, it looks one way, and for late books, it looks another way. And we were going to kind of be like, oh, this is just interesting. Like, why is it so kind of flushed out on one end and so not flushed out on the other? We were going to kind of poke through it and see, kind of get a fun picture of the wiki. And it was just more of like an interesting, goofy, like, you know, peeking through the wiki kind of video. And I was going to do a live stream as we go over the wiki and kind of look at like, oh, look, there's all this detail about Game of Thrones or whatever, but they kind of don't have any detail about Future Crows and stuff. And so, because I thought it was a fun thing that he was talking about. So we'll do that eventually. Not sure when, but you know, it was good to see everybody, and I will catch you guys later. So have a good rest of your day, everybody.